Monday, April 19th. If you will kindly join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And also, if you can please remain standing for a moment of silence for Phil Silvestro. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I just want to mention very briefly that on behalf of the town council, we are all deeply saddened by the passing of Mr. Silvestro. He was a longtime community advocate, served on the town council for many, many years. And I had the pleasure of serving with him on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And he will certainly be missed dearly. And we certainly want to extend our sincerest sympathies to his entire family. May he rest in peace. Okay, we're going to move on to item 3A, presentation by MDC Vegetation Management Program. And I would like to welcome our MDC Engineering Department. Good evening. And
yes,
you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, council members, for allowing MDC to present tonight. Tonight we have Susan Negrelli, Director of Engineering, Jason Waterbury, Senior Project Manager, Nick Salemi in MDC Communications, and Andrew Perham, Construction Manager. And my name's Chris Levesque, the Chief Operating Officer at the MDC. We're going to try to keep it short tonight, just to give you some background on what we've been working on over the last couple of years. And one of the what we want to discuss is sort of a thoughtful approach we've taken over the last 3 years, and we've worked with Rocky Hill Public Works and Town Engineering to actually pilot our vegetation management program along our Franch Street sewer behind Spino Ridge. There's a section of right-of-way private easement where we have a long stretch of sewer there that we've done a pilot program, and wanted to discuss some of those. Jason's going to walk through what we've done so far, but also what we're looking to do, essentially about 11.5 miles within Rocky Hill. But these are associated with our Clean Water Project goals and our CMOM program to maintain maintain the sewers across all of our member towns. So getting access to these sewers is paramount for us. But again, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Jason Waterbury.
Thank you, Chris. Can everyone hear me and see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just a brief agenda of what we're going to touch on in this presentation. Again, like Chris said, it's going to be relatively short. We do appreciate your time. The first is just a background on what the Rocky Hill collection system is and how the easement sewers pertain to that. Then touching on what the drivers are behind this program, and then the scope and schedule of the work we're doing in Rocky Hill. So the collection system within Rocky Hill is about 90 miles of sewer. About 21 miles of it is located within what we call easement areas. Those are the areas that are outside the public right-of-way. The areas that either go through parking lots or go through golf courses or go through wooded areas behind, developments and subdivisions. To get to those 21 miles, we do not have to clear 21 miles of easement. A lot of the sewers you can get to, from the road where it turns from a manhole in the road and goes off into cross-country areas. So in order to get access to those 21 miles, we actually only have to clear about 11 miles of easement. The sewers that are located in these easement areas are typically PVC and concrete, and they were installed primarily between the years of 1957 and 1979. And that's important because the sewers of those ages and those materials are not a huge concern for failure, unlike other member towns that we have. Our consent decree, which you're aware of, was issued in August of 2006. The primary objective of that was to eliminate structural sanitary sewer overflows, one of which was in Rocky Hill, which we eliminated recently. That's the Goff Brook overflow. One of the key components of the consent decree was a CMOM program, or the development of a CMOM program. And CMOM is capacity management, operation, and maintenance. And essentially it drives municipalities or POGWs to maintain their sewer system in a manner that eliminates or reduces maintenance related overflows. So in other words, the root ball that causes a sewer backup, you want to prevent that from happening before it actually happens. And the activities that drive that or help you maintain your system in that manner include sewer inspection via closed circuit TV, manhole inspections, sewer cleaning, and in some cases sewer lining. Now, the sewer inspection piece is really one of the key components. Is how we assess our sewer system. It's how we identify what needs to be cleaned. It's how we identify a sewer that needs to be lined before it actually fails to a point of not being able to be lined. We've actually inspected roughly 92% of our collection system district wide. Our entire collection system is a little over 1,200 miles. So only there's about 100 miles of which that remains that we can't get to because it's outside of the public right of way to a point where we can't get to it from the road. And that's the remaining 8% that's in those cross-country areas. So the picture on your screen right now is, as a whole, our sewer easements. Those highlighted sewers are all the cross-country sewers throughout the district that we cannot access from a normal roadway or it's located outside, not located within the roadway. We did do a couple pilots, like Chris mentioned, one of which was the France Street sewer, which is roughly about a mile of sewer in southwestern Rocky Hill. That was actually done about 2 years ago, and really without any issue. We worked closely with the engineering department and the wetland staff, and they are close partners in working with to understand what the goal and the target was as far as how we can leave these areas that benefits both of us. Initially, our first town we went to, when we went to this town by town program, was Bloomfield. It was about 97,000 feet of easement area. And now we're actually in East Hartford, which has 66,000 feet, a little more than Rocky Hill. Rocky Hill is about 59,000 feet, which is the third town that we identified to go to. Oh, a little quick on the trigger. Just a couple pictures before I go into narrative of what this includes. So the two pictures on your left are typical pictures of how we find our sewer easements before we get to them. Just wooded, overgrown. You probably can't even find a sewer manhole in those pictures, even though they actually are there. In the middle is kind of like a midpoint of what we're trying to get to. It's when they're cutting the stumps and removing the brush and cutting back the trees and foliage. And then the picture on the right is the final product. That's actually a picture from the France Street right away. That shows, you can see some of the grass starting to come in. Ultimately, it becomes more of a low growth, low maintenance grass turf or wetlands grass turf, depending on the area that we plant when we're done clearing. And the reason we're doing this is to get that vehicle in the picture there, access to these areas. So typically when we inspect a sewer within the public right of way, it's like a box truck that has our TV camera, our TV gear and whatnot that gets lowered into a sewer in order to and launched so we can inspect our sewer. Well, you can't do that in the sewer right away. You probably would only bring those box trucks into the sewer easements once and you would never see it again. So ultimately what we decided to go with was a UTV type vehicle, which is made for these types of situations. And we purchased it back in 2019. It was fitted out with our TV equipment and electronics. And it became the driver for what we're trying to get to here. Now, our sewer easements are typically 20 feet wide. However, because we have the ability to use this UTV, we're clearing about 12 to 15 feet wide within those 20-foot easements. The reason we're going a little bit wider than vehicles is obviously we want to have a little room to do U-turns and turn around when we need to, or have the ability to go around trees if there's a large tree that just is easier to be left than to be removed. So within the town of Rocky Hill, here's a close-up of the easement sewers that we're going to be clearing. I don't know if is my cursor visible on the screen when I do this?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So this is actually this right through here. Here's France Street going here in the southwest corner. So this stretch of sewer, actually starting right about here, which is right around Spino Ridge, coming down past Tedwin Farms and Stonehill Circle. This was the France Street sewer that we actually cleared. There's a farm area right over here in the southwest corner that we cleared into. So that was the pilot area that we did initially early on in the program. And then, all the other yellow sewers on this map are the target areas that we're going to get to next. On here, you'll see these pink blobs. Those are what DEP or DEEP refers to as the natural diversity areas. It's basically where there may or may not be endangered species. So one of the first steps we do in this program is once we identify the sewers, we develop mapping showing where we plan on doing clearing work. And, we use DEP's database and overlay these pink areas on here. And then we actually send a permit application to DEP, and they review it and determine whether or not within any of these areas we actually could be or could not be impacting any endangered species or species of concern. From on a positive note, in Rocky Hill, where our sewers are within these pink amoebas or blobs, we're actually not in any really impacting any species of concern. So that was a positive. That gives us a little more flexibility schedule-wise for clearing these particular easement areas. And then what we end up doing from next step is developing these maps, which show the work that needs to be done within a couple block radius or whatever. And these are what are given to our contractor, and this is what he uses to develop his work plans, which I'll get to in another slide. But basically, it shows the red sewers are the sewers that are within the public right of way that we've already accessed and TV'd inspected. Those yellow sewers are the sewers, that we do need to clear property to get to. Now, there may be portions where a sewer goes across a lawn and there's no actual clearing. However, on the map, it's still shown that way. And obviously, when the contractor does his work and when our field staff go out there, they identify that. And they don't, do any clearing work on someone's lawn. It's just identified from a sewer perspective. That's where we got to get to. Also of note on here is the highlighted green areas, which are the wetland areas. Those areas were identified using the town of Rocky Hill provided GIS information. And then those pink blobs that showed up on the prior map, they're enlarged on this. They're kind of like a purplish pinkish outline hatching. Now, if there wasn't a species of concern, it would have come back. It would have identified this map from DEP. It would have said map 5 has these restrictions associated with it. And prior to our contractor starting in Rocky Hill, he would have been made aware of that and he would have planned accordingly. Now, from a work plan perspective, the first step that happens is we send out notifications to property owners and abutters, notify them of the pending work. Then our MDC district personnel, survey staff, go out and field locate the sewer manholes. And the reason that's done first is just to create the center line of the easement, because our easements are typically 10 feet in either direction of that line. That gives the contractor a path to go off of. And then our contractor will go out and walk these areas and develop his assessments, which is his work plan. And the key components of those assessments are identifying where he's going to access the easements, the type of properties, the number of properties. It could be a town-owned property, it could be a commercial property, it could be a state-owned property, that kind of thing. He'll also identify the number of stream crossings and any particular precautions he has to take if there is a stream crossing, and that usually dictates the alternate site accesses. And then if there's any unique features like a fence or a steep grade or something that would mitigate his work in a normal manner in a given easement, that'll be shown on here. And then the quantity of large trees and the duration of work for a particular map. Once the work plan is accepted, the contractor will then schedule his work, and we'll go out and notify property owners with a door hanger about a week or so in advance of the work, or 1 to 2 weeks in advance of the work, just to give them another reminder that this work actually is coming. At that point in time, the contractor will go out and start his work. He also does it in phases. Initially, they'll do a line of sight clearing, which goes basically manhole to manhole, and then they'll work their way outwards from there, avoiding the larger trees as they can. Most of the work is done by hand, chainsaws, weed whackers, those types of equipment. The only equipment that's actually brought in is small walk behind equipment that's used for either chipping or stump grinding and cutting. And the chipping is a last resort if the material either can't be hauled out or presents a issue with regards to flooding and can't be left behind, or if a particular property owner requests the material to be left. And that's actually an important step I forgot to note is that prior to the contractor starting the work, he and district inspection staff to reach out to property owners and determine whether or not they wish to have the material removed or if they're okay with the material left behind. Material being the cut trees, stumps, brush, that kind of thing. And then after the initial clearing, the contractor will do flush cutting of stumps and or grinding, followed by seeding. Now the seeding is obviously done seasonally. We're not going to be seeding in August, so that's the sequence of the last two items really is dictated by the season and the species that are in there, because there is a herbicide application that will be done for invasive plants. Our contractor is licensed by the state of Connecticut to apply these types of chemicals, and it's more of a science than I was aware of before. I'm not a herbicide specialist, but it's definitely he'll go on for about a half hour telling you about certain windows of time that you can apply herbicides for a given species. And then on your screen right here is examples of the notifications that we send out initially. On the left is the property owner who owns the property where our easement is on. They get a certain notice. And then if you're a budding property owner, well, they don't own the land that the easement is on. We do want to make them aware that there is work going on behind their property or near the property, because it can be within eyesight. And the last thing we want to cover here is the schedule of the work. The survey has already started using district personnel, and that'll be completed. We expect to be late May of this year. The contractor has begun his assessments of easement areas, and that'll also be finished at the end of May. We expect the clearing and stump cutting to begin the very end of April, if not early May, and that'll continue through July or so. Herbicide applications would then be done between August and October, and that's again really depends on the species of a given assessment. And then the seeding in these areas after everything is done between September and October of this year. And that was it. So let me figure out how to unshare. Oh, there we go. So at this point in time, if you have any questions, myself and Chris and Susan and Andrew can answer them.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the presentation. It was very informative, and we're happy to see that the work is going on soon. So I'm going to open up the floor to our counselors if they have any questions. Hearing none, I will thank you all again for coming out. It's a pleasure to see you, and thank you for the work you're doing in our town.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Bye-bye now. Okay, we're going to move on to our next presentation. We are very fortunate to have with us this evening a presentation on emergency management, and I would like to welcome our guests, Regina Rush Kittle from DESPP, and as well as DEMIS. She is the Deputy Commissioner. And I would also like to welcome Mr. William Turley, who is the Regional Director of Region 3, to which Rocky Hill belongs. So welcome to both of you. We're happy to have you here and to learn about all things emergency management at the local level.
Madam Mayor and Rocky Hill Town Council for inviting us to join you this evening. And we will be doing our brief presentation on our division, Emergency Management and Homeland Security. And with my regional coordinator, Bill Turley. And Bill, are you going to share your screen, please?
Is it showing now? The screen?
Not yet.
No.
The fun of a Zoom meeting, right?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Is it showing now?
No, I see you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, this worked fine before.
Murphy's Law.
Is it showing now? No. DC, anything showing now?
No.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, I see it now. Bill.
All right. How's
Yeah.
that?
You can see it now, Bill.
All right. Sorry about that.
Oh, not a problem. We have it. So what we're going to be talking about, I said, is our division and our Region 3 office. What I want to start out with saying is that we're going to be talking about the importance of an emergency management director. And I'll tell you personally, there's a significant difference seen in the towns across the state that have a full-time emergency management director rather than a part-time or volunteer emergency management director. The, what I see as being important for the town of Rocky Hill is because I believe that everyone on our Rocky Hill Town Council and on this call are residents of Rocky Hill, and you and your family. And so that's the most important thing, why I feel you need someone that's going to be full-time in your town. And the secondly is that I'm also a resident of Rocky Hill, me and my family. So it's important for me also to feel that I feel that way. So I'll be doing a brief summary of DEMIS, which is our acronym for our Emergency Management and Homeland Security. And I'll also talk very briefly about our Connecticut Intelligence Center, which also falls under my division. So next slide, Bill. So our division, DEMIS, is actually in place because of Connecticut General Statutes Titles 28 and 29. And it's our coordinated integrated program for state emergency management and homeland security. And the statute itself also describes the local responsibilities and powers of the governor in an emergency. Next slide, Bill. So part of our collaboration with my division is that we have the Connecticut Intelligence Center, and which is referred to as CTIC. And we have a number of partners you see here on the slide that are within our Connecticut Intelligence Center. We also work with our Critical Infrastructure Unit. This is part of our Connecticut Intelligence Center. And we also work with the Connecticut State Police with their counterterrorism and cybercrime unit. And in that unit is the Joint Terrorism Task Force members that work directly with the FBI down in New Haven. And we also work with the Connecticut State Police Cybercrime Unit. Next slide, Bill. So our Connecticut Intelligence Center is designated as our state's fusion center. We only have one in the state of Connecticut. And we work with any kind of cyber activity that goes on throughout the state of Connecticut generally is reported through us. When we're working with our Connecticut Intelligence Center, you can also request formal threat assessments for significant special events. We've had towns, we've done assessments of town halls when they were faced with an issue that someone inappropriately entered the town hall. We did an assessment for them. So those are things that we can do assisting the town through my division. Also, we do request We fulfill requests for physical vulnerability assessments of critical infrastructure. We assist with our school security programs, working through our regional coordinators, and Bill will touch on that a little bit more. And we also do intelligence support during significant events, such as with our elections in November of 2020. The Connecticut Intelligence Center was very involved with that, working with the towns and also with our Secretary of State's office directly, and our Connecticut National Guard were all a part of that. And the Connecticut National Guard and CTIC were very much involved with the inauguration day and security at the Connecticut State Capitol when on inauguration day for 2021. Next slide, Bill. So our I mentioned that with our Connecticut Intelligence Center, we also cover cybersecurity key throughout the state of Connecticut. As you know, cyber is something that is occurring all across, not just Connecticut, but across the country. Cyber attacks are regularly happening. So we also have here with my division, we have an in-house cybersecurity trainer that goes out and trains within a town. A number of those, I'm actually hiring for that position now, replacing that position. We assist with cybersecurity planning. We also reporting with Connecticut Intelligence Center. Any cyber attacks are reported up to local law enforcement and then to the Connecticut Intelligence Center. And that's when we bring in reporting with the FBI and all the other partners that will be helping during the investigation. And we've also had the Connecticut National Guard assisting us when a couple of cyber attacks have happened in the state of Connecticut. And we also, and with that is the responding to cyber attacks. And that was a part of, we assisted with Connecticut National Guard assisting a town that had a cyber attack in their school system. Next slide, Bill. So what I like to say is our overarching goals of our emergency management is prevention and mitigation, planning and preparedness, response and recovery. And at all times, resiliency is the ability to withstand, adapt, and recover. And that's what we assist communities throughout Connecticut at any time. Hurricanes, natural disasters, man-made disasters, COVID-19. Next slide, Bill. Now, the way we've done this with our with my division is that we are broken up into 5 different regions. And this map illustrates those different regions that we're broken up into. And as our mayor pointed out at the beginning of our briefing here, that Rocky Hill is in Region 3. And on the call here, we have our regional coordinator, Bill Turley, and he's going to cover what the Region 3 office does and our regional emergency planning team. And so on to you, Bill. Bill, I think you might be muted.
Yes, thank you, DC. And thank you everyone on the council for allowing us your valuable time to present this to you. The Region 3 office is located at the Armory on Broad Street in Hartford. Also, that is also the State Emergency Operations Center. So I take care of that as well, make sure it's always up and running and available. We have a planner, Jonathan Hartenbaum. He assists towns with their local emergency operations plans. He's also part of logistics during COVID. And Natalie, our administrative assistant, helps the towns, the municipalities, the EMDs, and the financial officers with any paperwork that's required for the EMPG, which Emergency Management Performance Grant, which we'll get into in a little bit. And we also have a trainer, Bob Scatta, that assists with lots of different training classes, and he's also an IT guru. Demis, Region 3, we do not have county government here in the state. And as you see, we are broken into the 5 regions, and that's how we administer grants in the state. That's how we administer our emergency operations plans and regional emergency operations plans. The regions act similar to a county, but there's no taxes to be paid to the region. Just a few numbers here. Region 3 have approximately 1.1 million in population. And as you can see, we have the transportation staging area, which is at the Veterans Home. That is in case there's an incident at Millstone, people are brought to Rocky Hill on buses, or that's where the buses are staged. Then they're given assignments as to what community to go to pick up people. We have a regional emergency planning team. It's extremely important that emergency managers from all municipalities are involved or should be involved with the regional emergency planning team. This is how we respond to emergencies. There's a whole plan that will set in motion. And we did, when COVID first started, we instituted the RESP, the Regional Emergency Support Plan, to work with municipalities on providing them with PPE and other necessary materials. So there are most of these things like the dive team, regional dispatch team. Many of these are manned by volunteers and work directly with emergency managers. As I mentioned, the grants, we have the Emergency Management Performance Grant, EMPG, for our region alone. That's, you can see the amount here, $557,000. That is split amongst the towns that participate. This money, EMPG, can be used for emergency manager's salary. It's based on 50 cents per capita. And it is a matching grant. So whatever you receive from the state, the town needs to match. This money can be used for salary. It can also be used for equipment, for your emergency operations center, and things of that nature. We also have a Homeland Security grant program that funds a lot of different items such as the bomb squad, hazmat teams, and things of that nature. So, and then there's hazard mitigation grants. There are a number of grants. The school safety grant just released a week ago was round 5 for the school safety grants. And there's actually 2 grants this year. One is for school safety for equipment such as locks, windows, etc. And then there is a second grant for multimedia. As I mentioned, the regional emergency planning team. So each of the regions, Demas Regions, has one. There are representatives from each of the municipalities. Usually, the chief elected officer or chief elected official will name the emergency manager to be their voice at these meetings. We have a regional emergency support plan, as I mentioned, and we have a regional coordination center. So it's kind of like we have the state, you have a local emergency operations center. There's also a regional coordination center and a state emergency operations center. So if a local if a local town, a municipality needs a resource and they can't get it locally or from one of their surrounding towns through mutual aid, they can reach out to the regional coordination center or to me, and I will see if the regional coordination center has that resource available. If not, then we move it to the state level, which can require a WebEOC request. These are some of the groups that I mentioned that make up the REPT. They are called emergency support functions. So these are subject matter experts in these fields. You can see we have communications, transportation. During COVID and up till now, most of these RESFs have been activated and have been working and are still working to this day on COVID items. And once again, many of the people in these that make up these emergency support function work groups. They are volunteers, or they are EMDs, fire chiefs, police chiefs, etc. Some of our assets, we have community emergency response teams, or CERT, extremely valuable. These are volunteers. They work under usually the emergency manager for the town. They have been used and are used to man emergency operation centers. They've been used under COVID to deliver food, to work food lines, to provide traffic control at vaccination centers, at testing centers. They have been extremely valuable. We also have the Capital Region Medical Reserve Corps, also volunteers. Medical Reserve Corps is made up of medical and non-medical personnel that when activated can go out to a scene. The MRC has been extremely valuable and very busy administering vaccines throughout the region. There are hundreds of thousands of man hours between these two during COVID. We have a mobile communications vehicle that we actually had to use today at a vaccination site in Hartford because their Wi-Fi and communications was not working at the FEMA trailer very well, so that went out. That is under Region 3. We have Urban Search and Rescue, which is based out of Brainerd. These are skilled fire, police. They come from all walks of life, and they are used in rubble piles when buildings fall, people are trapped, swift water rescue, etc. So we have a number of assets and resources. This is a list of some of the resources that we have. There are, once again, there are a number of them: functional needs trailers, mobile communications, etc. The National Response Framework, this is how the nation conducts itself and responds during an emergency or an incident. And emergency management, you can see here's a team effort. It's in the center. Emergency management is kind of like the coordinator in bringing people together and communicating. So local responsibilities under the National Response Framework is the municipal chief executive officer, whether it be the mayor, city manager, town manager. They are responsible for ensuring the public safety and welfare of the people of that jurisdiction. And then the municipal emergency manager has the day-to-day authority and responsibility for overseeing emergency management programs and activities. We have the state, we work under what's called the State Response Framework. That's what we have been operating under since March 2nd of 2020. We operate under it all the time, but especially under COVID. This is what we've been living by. So DEMIS, as I said, is a coordination lead. We work with all the other agencies, and we work with the governor and the governor's unified command, which is primarily the commissioners and deputy commissioners of all the various state agencies. The State Response Framework is available online on our website, and it outlines the roles and responsibilities of the state, how we will respond, so that your expectations are clear as to what you can expect from us. The local emergency management director and municipal official handbook, that is also available. That's on our website. This is what I give to new emergency managers and new CEOs, so that they can see what the roles and responsibilities are, and the expectations are for them. And speaking of roles, so the local emergency management roles, municipal chief executive officer take actions necessary to mitigate a major disaster or emergency, request the governor or DEMIS Demis to authorize temporary use of civil preparedness forces. Declare an emergency is a typical one. That's one that we get during major snowstorms, blizzards, but even COVID. Most municipalities in the state did declare an emergency. The executive officer will appoint a local emergency management director, etc. So the local emergency management director, they're responsible for the local emergency preparedness, and they do it at the local. They do locally what Demis, what we do at the state level. They should be activating and managing the local emergency operations center, reviewing and approving the annual local emergency operations plan, which Rocky Hill does have one, and it has been submitted to us, and Rocky Hill is good until January of 2022, when it will need to be submitted again, reviewed and revised. The EMD also serves as the CEO's unified command, part of it, and administers oath, maintains rosters of volunteers, requests approval of activation. So if you have a CERT team, if you don't, it would be good to have one. Yes, there is some work to it. You're dealing with volunteers. They need to be trained, meetings, etc. But when there is an incident, when there is a disaster, they can provide you a great deal of resources and services. So the municipal CEO, emergency management director, and Demis regional coordinator, we collaborate all the time. Information flow is key. The other day there was a problem in a community with natural gas. I was on the phone with that emergency manager, and we were constantly talking and making sure that there weren't any other resources needed from outside that community and from the vendor. Some of the regions have coordination centers, as I mentioned. We have one. And I'm the regional coordinator is the link to the state EOC, which is where the state resources come from. If you cannot provide them yourself, if you've used up all your resources, if there is nothing locally, no mutual aid, your neighboring towns don't have anything, we will look to the region. I work with you and the EMD. I work with you to find that resource, whether it be from another town, another part of the state, or from a state agency. This is the flow, the incident flow, how information and requests go. It starts locally, comes up the incident commander, notifies or talks to the local EMD who says, I need X, Y, and Z. They contact me, and then I find the resource. Local emergency operations plan, I mentioned that Rocky Hill has theirs in place. It needs to be reviewed every 2 years. If we do not have it and you're receiving EMPG funding, then that funding will cease to come forward until we do get the plan and it is revised. And you have to make sure that your local emergency operations plan reflects your town's capabilities. Just because it does start as a template, but we know that templates are just a starting point. You have to make it your own. You have to make it work for your community. And we are working on a new template. So we hope to have one probably within the next year. Oh, and also a local emergency operations plan. I'm the state school safety program lead, and just want to make sure that everybody knows that your school all hazards plan needs to be an annex to your local emergency operations plan. Just make sure that anything that's public facing in your local emergency operations plan, that it does not have the school plan in it. You do not want that public. School safety plan annex, here it is here. It's built into your plan, and every town, every school district must have a plan, and they must submit it to the state annually every year. I left this in here, the Millstone Emergency Planning Zone, even though we're not, Rocky Hill's not in the planning zone, you can see that it is within a 50-mile radius, well within 50-mile radius of the Millstone Nuclear Power Plant. So if there should be anything released to the atmosphere, depending on winds, Rocky Hill could be affected. And we do have a drill coming up next month. And in June, which is part of the what's called the ingestion pathway, where radioactive material will be put into the air and will affect the communities in this radius. That will be a drill. And then Unified Command opening the EOC. This is the responsibility of the emergency manager and allows municipal leaders to jointly provide managerial direction through a common set of incident objectives. And this is where your emergency manager is important, because he should be doing incident action plans. And you see here has joint incident action plan. One should be put together that has the objectives, strategies. What are we going to do in the next 12 hours? What are we going to do in the next 24 hours? And it's important to have everybody at the table, your department heads, etc., EMD, police, EMS, public health. So everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what is expected of them next and what they need to do. Benefits of opening your EOC. It doesn't matter whether you have just a room with a couple tables and some phones and some computers, or if you have a room with a big fancy monitors, etc. It's important. It's a place where people can call, where information can be shared and gathered, so everybody has a common operating picture. And then the EPI, what we call the EPI, the Emergency Planning Preparedness Initiative, we do this every year. Local EMDs in towns, we ask the towns, the municipalities to bring their unified command together, and we work scenarios. We throw questions at the unified command, and we expect answers, or we do get answers back through the emergency manager and through Web EOC as to how that town, that municipality would handle that scenario. We are not doing it this year, and we did not do it last year because we have been working through a pandemic, which in and of itself is an event. And this is my contact information. Please feel free to contact me at any time with any questions. I would be more than willing to work with the town of Rocky Hill for whatever is needed, and always have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Regional Director Turley and Deputy Commissioner Rush Kittle. It's certainly very informative, and especially to us as a council as we are exploring our options here. And I have a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to the councilors first. And I can't see all of you on one screen. So if you do have a question, I'm just going to ask that you chime in at this time. Councilor Duff?
Yeah, thank you. So the question that I had, in the beginning, there is a note about the importance of a full-time emergency management director or someone who has those responsibilities. For a town of Rocky Hill size, how much was that a full-time position, or is it more about one person having the clear, responsibility of that role? How many hours a week do we think that is, or what are your thoughts for a town of our size? Given that it sounds like a fairly senior level position.
Bill, can you take that since you work with the
sure.
towns in your region?
Sure. So it varies across the region and across the state. It depends on what a town is willing to put into it. There are a lot of responsibilities. Emergency manager should be working with all the departments on everything from hazard mitigation, public works projects, EMS, especially right now with vaccination going on. The emergency managers in the towns that I've been dealing with have been extremely busy full time. And one of the things I find, especially if it's a shared responsibility with someone like a fire chief or a police chief, is that when an incident happens, they're so busy being the police chief or fire chief that they cannot put any time into being the emergency manager. And in times like this, there are EMDs who have the split roles and wearing many hats, and everything else is falling behind for emergency management. They're not getting it done because they're so busy doing their other functions. So it depends what your town wants to put into it, how much you're willing to invest. There's enough work for someone to do it full time. Certainly more than enough work, but it's up to your community.
Thanks.
Are there any other
Mayor.
questions? Go ahead.
Mayor, yeah, I would just like to thank Deputy Commissioner Rush Kittle. I assume when you say DC, you were just saying Deputy Commissioner.
Oh,
and
yes.
Director Turley for coming out and speaking to us. We found firsthand in Rocky Hill during the pandemic, which was also a pandemic during some pretty good storm power outages with 100-degree days, how valuable a quarterback is. And our emergency management person, James Bellinger, give him a shout out, was our quarterback. And boy, did we value that information he could pull from all those sources. So, you know, when I look at you and Commissioner, you said cyber was the big risk, and then certainly pandemics, storms, and then all the other things. And I would just say we found out that having information and having a quarterback so we could have that information also was just a huge benefit to the town.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anyone else? I just had a quick question about the CERT teams or the CERT program. How many municipalities would you say have their own? Because I know with our vaccination clinics, we relied on another town's CERT team to come in, and you know, that's when we first started paying attention to that. Now, I don't mean the town, but just, you know, myself being new to this. Yeah.
I have to apologize. I lost service there. I lost some of what was being said, so I apologize. Something happened. I lost bandwidth.
No problem at all. It's just a quick question about CERT teams and the CERT program. It's just sort of a new concept for me and maybe some of the other folks who are just learning about emergency management. And it was during our vaccination clinic that we actually relied on another town's CERT team to come in. But, you know, if there's an actual crisis, that's not going to happen. So I'm wondering, do most municipalities have them or not?
I wouldn't say most, but a good number of them do. I don't have a number for you on the number of teams that there are in Region 3, but those that do have them find them valuable, extremely valuable. As I mentioned, you know, there's one town where their CERT team, they actually go out to fires, house fires, major incidents with the canteen, and they provide food and things to the first responders and the victims of the incident. There's many that, as I mentioned, they were working the food drives, the vaccination clinics, etc. So they are valuable, but I will say that, there's an investment there as well with time. The region does have some money. There's some seed money and some annual money that the region has for training for your CERT team and for equipment. But it does take, you do have to have someone who's going to take the reins of that team and work on them with training, with assignments, etc.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Bill,
All
is
right.
that something that a full-time EMD could do?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Is that something that a full-time EMD could do for the town? As a part of
Yes,
it?
usually it's the emergency management director that runs the CERT team. There'll be a lot of times they'll have a civilian from the CERT team who's the go-between, kind of like the captain, so to speak, of the CERT team. But yes, that winds up being usually the responsibility of the EMD.
Okay, thank you. Right, I don't think that we have any other questions, and I want to thank you again, Deputy Commissioner and Director Turley, for coming out. Very informative and very helpful to us.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
for all
Thank
you
you.
do. Thanks for keeping us safe through everything, and stay safe.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I can just add one thing before we go off, a town, even a small town, can learn the value of their very involved emergency management director, as just occurred last week when the shooting, probably heard on the news in Brantford. So in addition to law enforcement response in that town, through the emergency management director, within minutes, as he communicated and the request was made, our state emergency management director, my director, was responding to the scene. Our Region 2 coordinator was responding to the scene. Our regional intelligence liaison officer that works out of the Connecticut Intelligence Center that I talked about previously was responding to the scene. And also there was a request for our mobile command vehicle, our MCV, which is communications vehicle, was requested. And just that quick, it was all these additional assets that the town had available to them in addition to their law enforcement. So
Thank you. Yeah, well, it sounds like we definitely need a coordinated effort. So, awesome. Well, again, stay safe and thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
thank you for inviting us. Have a good evening all.
You as well.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, full agenda. We're going to move right on to our next presentation. We are going to continue on our ordinance, Chapter 24, Commission on Inclusion and Innovation. And we have with us speaking tonight the chair, co-chair of the Connecticut Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity, Mr. Alan Tan. Mr. Tan, welcome. And thank you for sharing your expertise on this new endeavor that we hope to take here in Rocky Hill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councilors. I know I spoke previously at your public hearing about the, as you know, I'm also a resident of Rocky Hill. I've lived here my whole life, born here, still live here, moved my wife here. So anyways, as the mayor stated, I am the chair of the General Assembly's Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity. And I wanted to kind of share some of the experience we had with forming a commission that focuses on a lot of the issues that I believe you're hoping to tackle at a local level. Before I share some facets from our most recent annual report, which I think might be relevant because I know there were questions asked about appointments and that type of stuff. I do want to make some important notes. One is that a commission, it's intended as a conversation starter. It's a mechanism to have difficult conversations in deference to growing a community. And I do strongly believe with all the incidents that's been going on nationwide, it's important for people to talk to each other. And sometimes you need a facilitated manner for people to talk to each other. there's going to be some people that says the commission doesn't go far enough. And there's going to be people that says the commission goes too far. But the fact is, you've got to start somewhere. And in that context, I do applaud the town council for taking initiative to do that. The other facet that I wanted to note was at the state level, because Connecticut is a state of 3.4 million residents, last I checked. And Rocky Hill is a town of 20,000 people. At the state level, we have to focus on state issues. We love to go hyper local, but there's 169 of you and there's only one of me. So this is where if the town does create this commission, there is an opportunity for collaboration. One of the strongest aspects of any commission that deals with inclusion is the ability to connect with the citizens of the town. On behalf of the General Assembly, we help not the General Assembly with their legislation and those type of things that matter or not matter, but actually impact people that are historically disadvantaged. And one of the things that the commission does is not only does it put out events, which is something our subcommissions do, but also we have a staff that does the research on behalf of the legislature. So this allows us to lead the country in education, in facets of public policy. And that is something that I think at a local level would be beneficial to all of you as counselors. At the end of the day, you're going to have people who are not comfortable coming forward. I'll tell you, there are communities of color that are not comfortable because of trust and other issues. The COVID-19 pandemic has only emphasized that. It's kept me busy as a state official because I'm out there putting press conference after press conference after press conference. But at the end of the day, it's our job to connect our legislature with our people. And I think, a commission on inclusion would certainly allow you, the town council, another tool, if you will, to connect with the residents of our town. So if you don't mind, I'm going to try to present my, I'm using a video conference system, so I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll find out. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to push the share button. And let's see if this works. If this works, you should see a PowerPoint presentation. Do you see a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, we do.
All right. So I'm not going to go through all of this because it's, I'm trying to be conservative with time here. But as I stated before, we are a commission that's actually a commission of 6 subcommissions. So we have a subcommission on women, children or family, and seniors and elderly persons. And then we also have a subcommission on African American affairs, Asian Pacific American affairs, and Latino and Puerto Rican affairs. Now, I want to go back to my point about, we can appoint like 40 people, 100 people. But at the end of the day, there's not going to be a perfect system. The system we chose for the state of Connecticut was 7 per subcommission. We felt that it was enough to bring voices into the room, but not too much where it became unmanageable. And then, as I stated, in addition to that, we have staff and fellows, which assist with the nonpartisan research and the reports that we put on behalf of the legislature so that they can be informed as they make policy decisions for all residents of Connecticut. In my many speeches that I've given across the state, I've stated, I don't just work for the subcommissions that I represent. As the appointed co-chair of the whole commission, I work on behalf of the people of Connecticut. And I'm happy to share my experience with you all. And one of the things we did when we revised the statute in 2019 was we clarified our mission and vision, with eliminating disparities, building connections, best practices, and building inclusion for all Connecticut residents. But I wanted to mention that because at a statewide level, we organize ourselves into 2 co-chairs which are appointed jointly by the, the Legislative Management, the Joint Committee on Legislative Management, which also appoints all the non-executive directors of all the legislative agencies. And then the chairs of each subcommission are elected from the members of each subcommission, which are appointed by members of both parties. So I say this because there's been a lot of discussion I heard about the appointment, about political and all of that stuff. As I stated earlier, there's no perfect way to focus on appointments. We also chose the minority leader appointments, the majority leader appointments, and all of that. It's in our statute, which is section 2-127 of the Connecticut General Statutes. We chose that mechanism because it made sure that there was a diverse view of voices, regardless of who happens to be the majority or the minority in any given point of time. Because in our commission at the state level, we actually have appointments expire every 2 years, and they all expire together. But the difference is there is enabling legislation that states, with the exception of myself and my co-chair Karen, because we're a joint appointment, a true joint appointment, we're jointly appointed by the full Joint Committee on Legislative Management, which means that both parties take part in our appointment. The rest of the commissioners are appointed by each individual legislative leader, whether it's the minority leader, the majority leader, the Speaker of the House, the President pro tem, that kind of stuff. So, like I said, you know, I would just say from personal experience that you never want to let the perfect be the enemy of the common good. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to note that this commission was able to do. So, like, for example, we have demographics, which, you know, you can get that online. I'm not going to bother wasting the time on this, but I do want to focus on two things. One of the things that the state of Connecticut passed as legislation is the racial and ethnic impact statements. That's something that, you know, allows the state of Connecticut and its General Assembly to basically get more information that helps us look at public policy and its impact on communities that have been historically disadvantaged. Because one of the things that is very easy to do is it's very easy to forget about the people that we have left behind historically. So in Connecticut, this commission supported and the bill passed the bill on racial and ethnic impact statements, which will eventually find its way into the joint rules of the General Assembly. I'm not saying that every town needs to do something like this, but I just wanted you all to know as counselors that at the state level, they do have research around this to hopefully better inform public policy in Connecticut. And then another thing that I wanted to bring your attention to, given, sorry, a lot of slides. Basically, I'm trying to find it. Here we are. So basically, since the pandemic, this commission has been very focused. I know that in the previous presentation from our friends in the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, that the Deputy Commissioner actually is very participatory in all of the emergency support functions. Myself as co-chair of the commission and the executive director, we actually participate in Emergency Services Function 15, which is public outreach. There's actually a statewide diverse communities task force, and we work very closely with other state agencies and legislative leadership and others to basically bring awareness and address policy issues that arise during the emergency management process. So one of the things that we've had a big problem with throughout the state of Connecticut is the COVID-19 blame game. Is one of the things that we had to organize a year ago today, and yet again a month ago today, was to address the advent of hate crimes towards Asian Americans throughout the state of Connecticut. In Milford, there was a Asian American that nearly got run over by a truck, basically, and allegedly, and that the alleged attacker was promptly addressed by local law enforcement. Last March in Rocky Hill, it was brought to my attention that there was a young woman of Asian American descent that was just running within the vicinity of the west side of town and was nearly run over by a motor vehicle that intentionally targeted her. So it is these type of incidents that this commission at the statewide level works with other state agencies and municipalities. But we're focused more on the state to try to bring awareness to, so that we can prescribe solutions to that. So those are the type of things that I wanted to share from the work on the state side. I think I hit the stop sharing button, so it's back to me now, right? Is it back to me now?
Yes, it is back to you.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to say that I wanted to thank you for making time to hear what I had to do. Like I stated to yourself, Madam Mayor and Deputy Mayor Sharma, myself, the current executive director, Hernandez, and the legislative leadership, we collaborated on a very difficult consolidation of all the commissions into one really big commission. But it has enabled us to quickly adapt to the needs of the COVID-19 emergency. We have been a huge part of, we're working on vaccinations now for people of color. We are very well aware that the rates in Connecticut are not good, and we are working diligently to improve that. We're currently working on translating materials to other languages in a better effort to outreach and combat misinformation on vaccines. And we have events to try to connect people with other people so that way issues of one community can be amplified, because like I said, and I've said it many times, hate has no place in our state. And I've said this many times, I've put it publicly, and I'll say it again today. Together we thrive and divided we fall. That has been my mantra as the leader of this commission. And it is my hope that if you need any assistance, or if there's any questions I can answer, or anything from my experience that may be valuable to the counselors as you consider your ordinance, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I'm going to open it up to our counselors.
Yeah, I have
Go
a
ahead,
question.
Counselor Thoreau.
Alan, first of all, Alan, I think you went to school with my son, David Thoreau.
Yes.
Thought I recognize you. We were talking about having some kind of application form to select people. Do you have any recommendations or a template or some kind of what type of people you're looking for? I know you said it's somebody to be a facilitator, so somebody that maybe has mediation or that type of, or a facilitator skills, but what other types of things would you recommend? And
Sure, Counselor, sure. Yeah, just to answer your question, first, yes, I was in the marching band, and I think you know my mother, but anyways, to answer your question, the legislature, when we review appointments, one of the things that we do is we get a lot of interest from people that want to apply, and they come to the executive director. I'm not sure if the town is, I believe the town has a staff member that you're looking to assign to the commission. That might be the best way to attract applications. And what we did was we get the interest from the 6 communities that the subcommissions that we have in our commission. And then what we do is we make sure that they have a resume. We make sure that we have their statement of interest and, some screening questions, which is really up to the council to decide. And then from there, then the applications go to the appointing authorities who have the final decision over who gets to serve. So as I stated in our enabling statute, each of the leaders have at least one appointment. And there are 6 of the legislative leaders. The last one, is considered a Speaker of the House and the, President pro tempore of the Senate joint appointment. So what we do is that application, if you will, then the package of information is then given to the appointment aide in each of the leaders' offices. Now, of course, being a small town, I don't expect you to have an aide to do that, but I think a variant of that process might be useful because it would allow you to really gather people who are interested, kind of let the staff members, if you will, kind of do some initial screening just to make sure that everything's in good order, and then pass the packages of people that are interested for each member of leadership to consider for appointment. That's what we do at the state level.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Wow, you were very thorough. I'm going to I'll toss one out quickly. I know that you probably had an opportunity to read our draft ordinance. And as you know, I think one of the rules when you're drafting any type of ordinance is try to keep it broad. And could you sort of speak to what your statute looks like, maybe in terms of how broad it is, how narrow it might be?
Sure, I can tell you right now, when you all read it, it'll put you to bed. But anyways, I want to stress one important thing about statutes and ordinances and that kind of stuff. One of the important things for people to remember about our laws is they are necessarily broad. They're broad because they need to cover, we cannot anticipate every possible thing that's going to happen. Our statute at the state level is also broad. It clearly states that the commission has the ability through its executive director to accept federal money on behalf of any state agency or regional planning organization or blah, 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 blah. So basically, that's an example of the statute being broad. One of the things that I want to stress is that the statute is just kind of like putting a foot in the door, like a resume. It's what's going to open the door to have these conversations. Your bylaws, the bylaws of each commission, is actually going to creating the ordinance and getting it into the law book, if you will. I'm not a lawyer. Lawyers can speak better to me at this, but I will say that the statute has to be broad because you use the bylaws to focus the agency's mission. Bylaws are notoriously difficult to draft, especially the first set. And that's why I say, passing the ordinance is just the first step. The next step would be, next and crucial step is to make sure that you have a set of bylaws that is very well-defined. You have your rules, your points of order, your Roberts rules, or whatever parliamentary procedure you want to use, and your standing committees. If there is an outreach component to it, how you want to define that outreach, like whether you want to have, a targeted this group or that group or this issue, or you want to interface with the state's multi-generational initiative, which is being run through this commission, those type of things, because there's a lot of connections between municipal agencies and state agencies and federal agencies. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but I think it was necessary to elaborate on the fact that I know it seems broad, but I share the view that it is broadly necessary.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, if we don't have any further questions, I want to thank you for staying up late with us this evening and sharing your expertise. And certainly, if this is able to move forward, we will be calling on you. I imagine many a nights to guide us. So thank you so much.
Certainly. Thank you all for having me tonight. Have a great night.
You as well. Stay safe. All right. We are only on public comments, so we're going to get moving here. So this portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public, who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. And any person interested in providing public comment should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov or call 860-258-7682, and you will be provided with a link or a phone number to attend the Zoom remote meeting and instructions on how you will participate. And we do have some members of the public who are here with us this evening. So please remember to try to limit your comments to 2 minutes and to state your name and address when we call you. So we have first up Billy Collins.
Billy Collins from Fairweather Growers, 1146 Cromwell Avenue in Rocky Hill. This is all in reference to the Great Meadow Greenway designation. Us as being a large landowner in Rocky Hill Westfield Meadows, a large landowner, a large farm here in Rocky Hill. We have a lot of concerns. I'm not opposed to, I would like to know more about it. I'm not opposed to everything like that, but as far as a lot of issues, starting off with the roads throughout the meadows. Most of the roads in the meadows are 18 to 24 foot wide. If we make this a greenway designation, I imagine it's going to be publicized more broader, bringing down a lot more people walking and biking throughout the meadows. So us as a large operating farm, running machinery up and down through the meadows, how is this going to work out like as far as a safety issue? That's one issue. Crop spraying, we do a tremendous amount of spraying, not just us, but other farms down there to protect our crops from different pest problems. With everybody walking down there, we've seen actually a huge increase of people walking down there starting last year in 2020 with the pandemic, making it very difficult to spray our crops and keep those that are walking or biking down there safe. With a larger presence of people, how would we actually go about doing that? Like for us, since we do so much spraying, it's a huge thing for us to consider how it's all going to work out and play out. Food safety, we have a lot of people walking down there that actually bring their pets down there. Unfortunately, even though there's signs out by the Rocky Hill Ferry, there's signs before you enter the meadows. A lot of people still, once they get in the meadows, they actually let their pets off leash or cut across the fields. For us being GAP certified for food safety purposes, that's actually an automatic failure of letting domestic animals into your crops during the growing season. Also, going back to crop spraying, if people start cutting across the field just after you sprayed the field 20 minutes ago, we're at risk of making people sick. We're the one liable for that. And so how do we protect people from doing that? And then even a little further, I don't know if most people know, but the Rocky Hill Wethersfield Meadows is actually mostly privately owned land. It's not actually a public park. So designated as a greenway designation for basic open space, it's mostly active working farmland. I worry that we're making a bad misconception to the public by doing so. And lastly, if we do get a green space designation, this includes no motorized vehicles. With farm machinery, trucks, tractors, trailer trucks, how does this all play into role? As far as, does that mean we lose our right to use motorized vehicles down there once it becomes a designation? Maybe not right now, but maybe in the future it might. So these are a lot of our concerns. I'm not opposed to all this kind of stuff. I think we need to figure out how this could actually work for everybody if this is going to happen. Because just like us down there as a farm, most everybody down there is trying to make their living out of this here. Whereas other people down there are down there for recreation purposes, biking and walking. So I want that all considered, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you.
We will now move to Timothy Lewis.
Thank you, Miriam.
You're welcome.
Yeah, my name is Tim Lewis, 34 Ridge Road. I am president of the Great Meadows Conservation Trust, and GMCT is a landowner in the meadows. I would like to state that I and GMCT are in favor of the town council approving the application for the Greenway designation for the roads in the meadows. To be clear, for those who are not fully informed, this designation is only for the public roads in the meadows. Since the town council voted to close the gates to the Rocky Hill Meadows to motor traffic, there has been a large increase in pedestrian and bicycle traffic in the meadows. So in a sense, the Meadow Road is already becoming a greenway in its own right. The Meadows has been named an important bird area by the Audubon, and there has also been an increase in the number of birders in the meadows because of this. The town of Wethersfield, having established the Heritage Way bike path, did at their last town council meeting vote quickly and unanimously to approve their application for the establishment of the Greenway. But what are greenways? The state of Connecticut defines greenway as a corridor of open space that may protect natural resources, preserve scenic landscapes and historical resources, and offer opportunities for passive recreation. Well, what does this mean for the meadows? As I mentioned, people are already finding the meadow roads to be much safer to use since the gates have been closed, and are discovering what a beautiful area the meadows are. Signs at the gates already inform those who enter that all land in the meadows are private property, encouraging people to remain on the roads as they pass through. These signs also display other cautionary messages the public needs to be aware of. Obtaining the designation from the state of Connecticut as a greenway will allow the town of Rocky Hill to apply for grants to improve signage, fences, and gates if needed, and improve the condition of the roads, which will also help farmers. The Great Meadows Conservation Trust is dedicated to saving the floodplain's vital agricultural, scenic, archaeological, and wetland resources. We believe that the intrinsic value of the land must be high on the public agenda. In order to accomplish this, the public must know the value of this land, and to know it, they must see it. It is our experience that once a person has the opportunity to put their eyes on this area, they are convinced at how valuable it is and understand why it must be protected. This does not happen by hiding it. It must be seen. Therefore, the town council should vote to approve the application for greenway designation of the roads in the Great Meadows. Connecting with Wethersfield's Greenway is the next logical step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Moving on to Kevin Sullivan.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name's Kevin Sullivan. I'm actually a resident of Wethersfield. I'm at 79 Wright Road, Wethersfield. And I hope I'm not being too presumptuous by addressing the town council of another town. But as the previous public speakers were saying, I'm here to talk about the Greenway nomination. And the reason why I think it's okay for a Wethersfield resident to chime in is because we share the Great Meadows. Certainly the land is not shared, but we have political boundaries that run through it. So we share the Great Meadows. And as Mr. Lewis said, Wethersfield has already a longstanding greenway in town, and part of it includes the Great Meadow Road that runs through the Great Meadows. And I should say, by telling you a little bit about what's happened in Wethersfield around the nomination, I'm not representing the town of Wethersfield government. It's just me trying to relate the kinds of questions that came up in Wethersfield. So we already have this greenway, and when we learned that the nomination was a possibility, we just thought it was a natural thing to want to honor our own greenway because we love it. And that's pretty much all there is to a greenway. It's an honorary, symbolic title. It does get added to the state's, to a list in the state's plan of conservation development as a greenway, but that's really as official as it gets, and no more controlling than that. It doesn't change anything about access or use of the road or any of the adjacent properties. It doesn't create any rights or responsibilities on either the town or the landowners. So I think it's already been stated that the biggest changes that have happened most recently is the increased use due to gate closing and COVID. So if there are any problems related to that or anything else, then certainly we all need to work through them. But I really don't think the Greenway designation is going to change that a lot. As an advocate for biking and walking, I would love to say that there would be floods of people coming through there just because I like to see people bike and walk. But honestly, I would tell you that I don't think you would be able to notice if you counted the number of people that came into the meadows, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference after the greenway was designated. So this is all about amenities in town, and there were questions raised by our town councilors at their meeting, and the town manager explained how amenities like a greenway can help raise property values in general. It's the type of thing that residents want, and why they seek to be a resident in a given town if those amenities exist and are available. Just talking about the livability of a town depends on amenities like that. And to some degree, towns actually compete with each other with things like this. And we are so lucky to have the Great Meadows in our two towns. I really look at it, especially with the possibility of getting some grant money, of trying to do more with signage and things like that to better clarify what is public and what's private, and to emphasize with the users not to go on the private property. I definitely don't want to see any crops damaged or anything like that. So I look at it as an opportunity to enhance that for everybody. But regardless of whether there's a Greenway nomination or a grant or anything, we all need to work together to coexist. And I think it's working fairly well. I don't, by saying we need to coexist, I'm not saying there's any great tensions out there, but I think the problems are all manageable. And the district health department is somewhat involved in this already. They've helped convene some discussion across town with the farming community and other landowners, and they actually could be one of the first sources of potential grant funds for signage and things like that. And some of the discussion would help shape what goes on those signs. So I'm glad to see Mr. Collins on here. I'll note him as a contact and make sure that he's included in discussions that we might have about signage and things like that. So I don't know what your format is. I'm welcome to take questions, or if you don't ask questions, then that's all I needed to say, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. We will move on now to Lisa Gilbert.
Hi, Lisa Gilbert. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Gilbert Farm LLC, 730 Elm Street. I've been on the DEEP's website for what is the criteria for the state greenway. Number one, may protect natural resources, preserve scenic landscapes and historical resources, or offer opportunities for recreation or non-motorized transportation. Two, may connect existing protected areas and provide access to the outdoors. Three, may be located along a defining natural feature such as a waterway along a man-made corridor, including an unused right-of-way, traditional trail routes, or historic barge canals. Or four, may be a green space along a highway or around a village. As Mr. Collins has previously stated, I'm afraid that if this becomes an official greenway through the state of Connecticut, we are going to have a problem as a farm and the rest of the farmers that farm in the Rocky Hill Meadows and the Weathersfield Meadows, that our farm machinery, our equipment, our tractors, pickup trucks, anything with a motor on it will not be able to gain access on this greenway and have access to our private working farmland. The state at some point, because if this is going to be on a state website, we're going to bring in people that are unfamiliar with this area and may cause an interruption of our agricultural businesses. The second thing that I would like to point out in statement 3, I don't know if the state is considering, now that the gates are closed on this road, that this is an unused right of way. The Great Meadow Road is a right of way for the agricultural producers in town to gain access to their parcels of land. This is how we move about from field to field all times. So I'm feeling, with the way it's spelled out on the DEEP's website, that these concerns need to be addressed before anything can move forward to the DEEP for an official greenway. I think as the meadows are right now, people want to go in there, they want to hike, they want to bike, they want to be able to walk. That's wonderful. To make it official, I think is actually going to come back and backfire on the farmers, and you're going to put agriculture in the town of Rocky Hill as non-existent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Moving on to Jason Matway.
Hello, my name is Jason Matway. I live at 238 Brook Street. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I live at 238 Brook Street. I am the proprietor of Matway Farm, and I also work full-time at Fairweather Growers. As everybody knows, the primary function, as the majority landowners see the meadows, is for agriculture. Agriculture is not something that's kind of a spectator sport, so to speak. It is wonderful that people like to get out in the outdoors and to enjoy nature and enjoy the meadows. I mean, we get to see it every day. We love it and we fully appreciate it. But there's a larger issue here. The more people that come on the road, since we have seen this increase in traffic due to COVID, there has also been a very noticeable increase in things like complete disregard for the rules, people trespassing, dropping litter. It seems like people just think that it is a public park. Now, there are signs posted at all three public entrances to the roads, but even people with the best intentions completely disregard it. And I will cite an unnamed example that the last time we had meetings about all of this, and we were arguing about people being allowed to bring pets, one of the largest advocates for that, after everything went through, I caught that individual firsthand with their dog off leash 2 weeks after everything went through. And this person was a very large advocate for allowing pets in the meadows. And they were one of the first people I saw break the rule. The simple fact of the matter is, when there's nobody around, people do whatever they want. I have signs posted all over my property. It's one of the first parcels you come across when you enter the meadows from the ferry. And I routinely get people out in the backyard. They're fishing out on the river. They're dropping garbage. I had somebody drop a glass bottle in my field. My hay baler picked it up. It shattered it. I sold that bale of hay to a customer, and they put it out for their animals to eat with broken glass in it. I mean, so who's liable for that? And I mean, that's a small example. Okay, does that happen every day? No, of course not. But it shouldn't really happen in general. The roads in the meadows aren't large enough to support this influx of traffic that we have seen. It's a dirt road. And so when it's dry in the summer, like that drought we had, no matter how slow you drive or how courteous you try to be, you're dusting people. And there's people everywhere, especially on the weekends. I mean, to the point where there will be vehicles lined up outside of the gates. And sometimes there's people even parked in front of the gate. And it makes it difficult to get in and out. With the increased foot traffic, pesticide usage is a very big issue. We can't have people walking on the road when you're applying pesticides to the fields. And even as one of your previous speakers tonight, the gentleman from the MDC pointed out, when they use their herbicides, it's a very precisely timed procedure. It's no different in agriculture. We have abutting properties with neighbors, and we have to make sure that the wind conditions are right, that the crops are at the right stage. There are certain things that are applied where there's only a window of time of a day. And if we miss it, we're too late. If we go too early, it doesn't do its job. And when there's people in the road and it makes our window a little bit more closed, everything just gets more difficult. And then there's another issue with wildlife control. We have to keep the wildlife out of our fields as part of GAP as best as we can. There are things that go on to prevent wildlife from entering the fields. And having people in the fields is a big hindrance, and it is very dangerous. I don't know if there's anybody here from tonight representing the hunting club, but I would imagine they probably wouldn't be too thrilled about more people coming to the meadows as well. The green space is a great idea, but I don't think that this is the right location for it.
Mhm.
And I know that there's not really like another location. I wish that there was. I love the idea of people being able to go out and walk and bike and do all that stuff. It's wonderful, but it's becoming very burdensome to our daily activities, to our jobs. And I really don't know how all of this could really work well. And with that, I'm all done. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Matway. We will now move to Krista Mariner.
Hi, I'm Krista Mariner, 58 Farms Village Road, and I submitted correspondence via email. I'm writing tonight about the update from Town Attorney Carrie Olson on 60 West that's listed under new business on tonight's agenda. At the conclusion of the last Town Council meeting on April 5th, during the Town Manager's report, John Mayer read an opinion by Ms. Olson on 60 West. This brief opinion left me with more questions than answers. What exact information had been told by the Town Manager to Ms. Olson about new developments at 60 West? For example, was she told that Wayne Chapman was a private referral from out of state and that his bill was being paid for by Mass Health, which is Massachusetts Medicaid? As I have mentioned in prior correspondence, I examined the memorandum of decision for the Town of Rocky Hill versus Secure Care Realty, LLC, which is HHD CV 13-60-37949F. I have attached page 2 below, along with a brochure for 60 West. The facility known as 60 West was specifically established under the authority of the Connecticut General Statutes 17B-372A, which provides as follows, quote, notwithstanding any provision of the General Statutes, the Commissioners of Social Services, Correction, and Mental Health and Addiction Services may establish or contract for the establishment of a chronic or convalescent nursing home on state-owned or private property to care for individuals who, 1, require the level of care provided in a nursing home, and 2, are transitioning from a correctional facility in the state, or 3, receive services in the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. A nursing home developed under this section is not required to comply with the provisions of Section 17B-352 to 17B-354 inclusive, unquote. The language about a correctional facility in the state makes it a fair question whether Secure Care can properly go shopping for clients from out of state. Mr. Chapman's placement was a private referral from out of state. He wasn't sent to 60 West by Connecticut DOC or DMHAS. Mr. Chapman's bill is being paid by Mass Health, which is Medicaid. Mr. Chapman doesn't meet the residency requirements for Massachusetts Medicaid, and Medicaid is not portable from state to state to the best of my knowledge. Taking the statute one step further, it can be inferred that out-of-state placements aren't allowed at 60 West. It's an arguable point and worthy of examination by Ms. Olson. 60 West is less than 500 feet from Mosher School. 60 West overlooks Mosher School, its playing fields, playground, and school buses. I would like Secure Care to get the message loud and clear that Rocky Hill will not sit by quietly as Secure Care accepts a patient like Mr. Chapman, one of the most notorious child predators in American history, and a person of interest in the 1976 disappearance of 10-year-old Andy Puglisi from Lawrence, Massachusetts. Secure Care did not have to take Mr. Chapman as a patient. Secure Care's actions show wanton disregard for the public safety and general welfare of the children of Rocky Hill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mariner. Moving on to Jacqueline Farnham.
Thank you. Jacqueline Farnham, 95 West Street. This time here to voice the concerns of residents in one of the highest density populations in town. It's good to see that 60 West is on the agenda tonight. Residents hope that Ms. Olsen can objectively address the precedent that notorious pedophile Wayne Chapman's arrival sets, in that an out-of-state patient was taken in at 60 West. Now the floodgates are open for the worst, hardest to place criminals who will make Rocky Hill their home, less than 500 feet from Mosher School. Criminals will continue to come in from around the country, free to come and go in our community. There are 95 beds in that facility, and 60 West owners make $500 a day per bed. They have incentive to fill every one of them. From what I understand, Ms. Olsen has said that 60 West is a private nursing home and can contract with whomever they want. This town sued 60 West to argue that point, that they are a private nursing home in order to collect taxes and to require them to meet our zoning regs. 60 West owners were claiming that they were an arm of the state by statute. That was their claim. How ironic that as an arm of the state, they would have to operate under the law that created them, which is for DMOS and DOC Connecticut criminals only. So our winning that lawsuit was not a win. Is that what she's saying? Because that would be very unfortunate. The town didn't win the zoning regulation argument that followed, adding insult to potential injury. We also need an answer regarding the portability of Medicaid from Massachusetts to Connecticut. When 60 West owners accepted the monster from Massachusetts, they made it clear they are willing to take any criminal to make money, and they do not consider the safety of the community. Even if we can't legally find fault with the shady Chapman deal, we can create an ordinance. There is still more to do. We have examples from other towns. I would like to see this council take further action by proposing an ordinance to prevent congregate housing of sex offenders near a school with children. We are working with Kerry Wood on a state level, but that's no excuse for any lack of further action from this council. Let me be clear. I'm not going away on this issue, and I will be waiting for the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farnham. Moving on to Ed Ciccarello. Okay, hearing none. Moving on to Brian Donahue.
I'm here. I'm here.
Going back to Ed Ciccarello.
Yeah, I'm here. Hold on. I just had to unmute myself. Thank you. Just give me a second. Thank you. I urge Ed Ciccarello, 40 Riverview Road. I urge the mayor and town council to follow the Rocky Hill Plan of Conservation and Development and apply to nominate the Rocky Hill Great Meadows as a state greenway. The Rocky Hill Plan of Conservation and Development is clear in directing the town of Rocky Hill to preserve and protect farmland and to reestablish a connection between the community and the Connecticut River by preserving public access and open space along and near the riverfront. It also encourages the town to interconnect open space areas into an overall system, an integrated greenbelt, by establishing a series of trails, a signage program, and a community gateway feature. This plan of conservation and development may be new information to some residents and landowners, but it has been in effect since 2015 and moreover a guiding document for our entire town. Anyone with a knowledge of the Rocky Hill Meadows knows that agriculture accounts for its major land use. Originally cultivated by the indigenous people about 1,000 years ago, farming contributes economically as well as culturally, giving Rocky Hill its distinctive rural character. Rocky Hill is a right to farm town. The Rocky Hill Meadows is also an important bird area, part of a global network of places recognized for their outstanding value to bird conservation by the Audubon Society. There is an important bird area sign at each of the 3 entrances. Another use in the meadows is recreation. Walkers, runners, and bicyclists traverse the existing 3 miles of public roads. For sure, there are a number of issues concerning the meadows that need to be discussed, but I would suggest this is not the forum. The appropriate forum is the Farmland Preservation Committee for issues like hunting, pesticide application, tree cutting, road grading, culvert clearing, or the removal of graffiti from the gates and bridges. I would also suggest some of the other issues that were brought up by some of the farmers tonight. These are all valid concerns, but not something that should stop the town from applying to become a state greenway. In 2018, we passed an ordinance to lock the meadow gates and limit motorized vehicles to landowners and other people with just cause. Since the pandemic, public use of the meadows, walking, running, and bicycling has increased. Nominating these 3 miles of Rocky Hill public roads, like Weathersfield has done already on their meadow roads as a state greenway, merely means we are applying to put up a state greenway sign at each of the meadow entrances. A sign like this could help keep people on the right road, out of the fields and off of the private roads. If accepted, the Rocky Hill Meadows would be listed on a state greenway map. A state greenway designation will also allow the town to apply for grants in the future to improve the meadows. I urge the council to follow the Rocky Hill Plan of Conservation and Development and apply to make the Rocky Hill Meadows a state greenway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ciccarello. Moving on to Brian Donahue.
Thank you for letting me come tonight. I have been working with trying to get diversity involved with, in the past year, I've had at least 3 meetings. I'm having another meeting on April 29th at 7 o'clock. And we're trying to bring everybody together. I'm supporting the commission, but it's only one step. I think that we need to, as our speaker earlier had mentioned about somebody who was Asian last year was intentionally almost hit by a car. There are a lot of issues that have been happening throughout the years of Rocky Hill, as well as other places as well. But we have to come to a time of society that we accept all people for all their different abilities. I've included organizations that have represented Indian, Black, Jewish, gays, mentally and physically different abilities. Yeah, I'm going to be requesting to come back next month to your town council to ask for a resolution, which we're putting together, which is called Racism is a Public Health Crisis. It's not saying that Rocky Hill is a racist society, but that we need to know that racism is a public health crisis throughout the whole state and throughout the whole nation, not just specifically to Rocky Hill. But I do want you, I think a good step is the supporting of the commission. And I do think that it doesn't matter. I've worked with, it's both sides, the Republicans I've worked with in the town, such as Mayor Murata. I worked with the Democrats and their leaders, as well as Christoph. So it's not about, racism isn't about a Democrat or a Republican issue. It's about a human rights issue, and it's about a humanity issue. So I don't care who it is. I think we can all work together. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. And I believe that concludes our public comment section of the meeting. So thank you for attending, and we are going to continue with the remainder of our council meeting. So moving on to appointments and resignations, Councilor Duff, anything?
We do not from our side.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Sharma?
No appointments or resignations at this time.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the approval of minutes, Town Council meeting April 5th, 2020, which you have in your packets. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the town council meeting minutes from April 5th, 2021.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to subsection B, approval of the minutes of the public hearing, April 8th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the public hearing from April 8th, 2021.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's get to our subcommittee reports, beginning with finance.
The Finance Subcommittee met on April 15th. On tonight's consent agenda, we have an approval of a postage meter in the amount of $160.90 a month for a 60-month lease. We received an update on bond refunding. There's a possibility that we'll be getting some guidance from the federal government that we may be able to issue tax-exempt bonds. And if we're able to do so, we'll be looking at a refunding of our existing debt, which could lead to a potential savings of about $500,000 over the length of those bonds. Hopefully, we'll not be extending the terms. We'll just be refunding those items. Town did receive,
Excuse me, Councilor Greenspan. I just want to remark to the public who's still on. So public comment is over and we can hear you speaking in the background, just so you know. Just maybe be careful, okay, guys? Okay, go ahead. Councilor Greenspan.
No problem. We did receive FEMA money related to COVID, and we have $146,311 left in the account as of the end of March. For Storm Isaias, we have submitted $400,000 in reimbursable expenses, which will be reimbursed if approved at a rate of 75%, amounting to $315,000 approximately. Revenue and expenditures were in line with the budget. We're 3/4 of the way through the budget, so at 75%. We reviewed legal bills. We didn't see anything that jumped out at us there. Of note, the roof at Town Hall, it happened to be a rain day, was leaking, so we may have some repairs forthcoming. The preliminary audit steps will begin in June, and that's preliminary to year-end typical audit procedures. And we did have a discussion on the American Rescue Plan funds and how they may be used, but of course, we're still waiting for further guidance from the Treasury. Our next meeting is May 13th at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Councilor Greenspan. Moving to government ops.
Yes, government operations has not had a meeting since our last town council meeting. We are next scheduled to meet on May 3rd, 2021, and we may have just part of the discussion, the aforementioned town hall roof issue that Councilor Greenspan mentioned. We talked about in finance. So.
Thank you, Councilor Levine. Moving on to public safety. Public safety.
Yeah, I will be today. Chairman Sharma could not attend the meeting, so I will be presenting for him, Madam Mayor. So the public safety meeting this afternoon had our regular speakers for different departments, as we always have, fire, ambulance, police, emergency management. But we also had Charlie Brown from the Central Connecticut Health District briefing us on a couple of issues, most importantly, an ongoing issue with COVID, which we have been hearing about for a year or more. We all hope that we'll stop hearing about it soon, but I guess it's not in the past yet. So I'm here to report something which Charlie Brown reported to us at the committee meeting Some good news there. 57% approximately of Rocky residents have now received the first dose of the vaccine, which is very close to the state number, which is about 60%. So we are like lagging a couple of percentage behind, but that shouldn't be a big concern because these numbers are like kind of lagging when you look at like the city level data. So the good news there is, as the state, Connecticut is doing much better than the country, which is at about like 50%. So that gives you a little bit of perspective on where we are in terms of like these numbers. Obviously, there is still a vaccine hesitancy out there, and Charlie Brown also talked about that in his report and mentioned the steps they have been taking and they continue to take to kind of mitigate that problem of vaccine hesitancy by deploying some of the what they call health educator, right? And so over the last
Pretty good, huh?
John Murphy, is there a way that we can close those speakers down?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, so as I was saying, Central Connecticut Health District has been trying its best to like mitigate some of those vaccine hesitancy concerns, and they also had planned for a big vaccine clinic on the Berlin grounds. But as you know, with that unfortunate situation with J&J vaccine, they put that on hold. But they will be running like smaller clinics, if you will, with like these with homes in town, like senior homes and things like that. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is something which Charlie Brown talked about and reiterated in his brief to the committee this afternoon, which was about the apple rehab situation where Legionella was found in the drinking water there, and he reiterated the MDC communication which we received on April 15th, which was that that problem is limited to apple rehab and not a concern for anything outside in terms of the drinking water that MDC provides. So that quality issue is limited to that particular facility. And as a sidebar, that facility has been flagged twice since 2019 for the same problem. So it's now in the hands of the state, basically Department of Public Health, and they are in charge of that situation, and they will be mitigating and taking action, appropriate action in that situation. So from our point of view, from the council's point of view, there's not much to be done there. It's with the DPH, and they are in charge of that situation, and they will be taking like appropriate steps. Last thing on this, there was other related reports about these fire, ambulance, police, and emergency management reports that I mentioned in the beginning. But in the interest of time today, I'm not going to go through those because we have a packed agenda today. So I think I will cover the highlights. So thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Councilor Prakash. Moving on to Senior Liaison.
Senior Liaison has not met since our last council meeting. Our next meeting is April 26th at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Councilor Greenspan. Moving on to Land Acquisition and Farmland Preservation.
Madam Mayor, no meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 27th at 6.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sharma. Moving on to school. Oh, sorry, missed you again. Liaison to the state rep and the state senator.
Sure. No reports from our legislators per se, but it is interesting to note that we did get good news that the state bonding from State Rep Wood, that the State Bonding Commission approved $500,000 for Rocky Hill, which is really perfect timing and will be very helpful with the initiative already underway on the Ames project. It's interesting, as it turns out, the biggest impediment or obstacle to the developers in the past on this project moving forward has been that of the low traffic volume in that end of Main Street. And because of that, a lot of developers were unwilling to shoulder the additional risk and the finances for cleaning up. So that will help. And that's it.
Oh, okay, thank you. Moving on to school liaison.
No meeting, no report.
Thank you. Moving on to Capital Improvements Committee.
No meeting, no report.
Thank you. And then finally, Economic Development Subcommittee.
And the same, no meeting, no report.
Wonderful. Okay, going to the consent agenda, we have approval of the lease postage machines.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the lease for the postage machine as noted in our council documents.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Wonderful. Okay, let's go on to old business, paragraph A, discussion, possible action, community/senior center.
John, you're on mute.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the weather's been good for the bricklayers to continue putting up the brick walls around the back of the community center. As they go in along, they'll start putting in the windows as they finish up their brickwork. Starting next week, you're going to see out in front by the fountain or the horseshoe turn-in, they're going to be taking down the fence and putting up some Jersey barriers. And they're going to be starting to work on the parking lot up front by the front of the gym on 699 Old Main Street. So it could be open for a few days, but then when they eventually get working, both the entrance and the exit will be blocked off for approximately 2 to 3 weeks. So hopefully they'll start that at the beginning of May and move along and get that in place sometime by the end of the month. And that's it for the community center. Oh, also, one other thing, did schedule a walkthrough this Wednesday at 3 with the architect. So if any counselor is interested in seeing what it looks like inside or the building as well as inside the fence, just come with shoes, and if you have a hard hat, bring that along. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then paragraph B, discussion, possible action, ordinance, chapter 24, Commission on Inclusion and Innovation. And I think I will turn this over to Ms. McGee.
Good evening. May it please Madam Mayor and Town Council, we have been consistently focused on the importance of the input of the community, and given what we heard during the public hearing and public comments for the Town Council, and with John's input and suggestion, I would propose we allow Town Council time to consider what was said earlier this evening. John, is that okay with you? My town manager, John, is that okay with you?
Well, at this point, it's, I guess it would be more up to the council if they want to move forward with the existing document or tonight and pass it, and then within 30 days would go into effect, as opposed to, or the opposite would be to table it and make the appropriate changes if need be.
if we make changes, do we then have to have another public hearing or to accept those changes, or I guess present those proposed changes, or is there some manner of flexibility that we would be able to allow certain modifications before doing that? Just thinking how it might potentially run into budget season if we have to wait, to post another public hearing and then, schedule it to be approved later.
I would say if you were going to make material changes to the document, you'd have to go through the same ritual that we did tonight, where we'd have to post it again and have a public hearing and then have it on the next agenda to be approved.
I would suggest that we pass the ordinance tonight and then make changes as we improve it as we move along, because we have to start somewhere. Like the commissioner, very articulately talked about this. Like there is no perfect starting point, right? We have to start with a baseline, and this is our best baseline. I think we can go back and forth, but we are not going to make everyone happy. So we don't want to make, the perfect be the enemy of the good, like the commissioner said. And I find a lot of value in that. I am a big believer in like starting on the baseline somewhere. And this is a pretty good baseline. I mean, we are not talking about something we just created yesterday, right? I mean, Dana has been working very hard on this. The mayor has been working very, very hard on this. And I'm sure John Mayer has been working hard on this. So, and Chris, you have been working hard on this. I can thank all of you, except for myself. I'm sure you have all of you working better than I have been on this. So thank you for all of that. And I would say we should just move on with this and put something out there and then do continuous improvement.
I think all due respect, I think I disagree with that. I think I agree with Dana McGee. We heard a lot of things today. One of them we don't have in our ordinance about have them issuing bylaws, that the commission should come up with bylaws. The effective date is not until January for this commission. So I think if we took to the next council meeting again to look at some of these and see if we want to adopt any of these changes, we have plenty of time. If the effective date was July, I think I would agree with you, but it's January. So I think we have time. If we were to make changes, we'd have to go through amending the ordinance, which would be going through a whole ordeal again. So I think I would suggest that we table it for tonight and see if we want to make any of those changes. But I think the bylaws to me was a thing that we all missed. And I think it's something that's important. So we may want to include that. So I would suggest that we bring it up at the next meeting.
Anyone else?
I would just be curious what, Dana, what were some of your concerns? Because from what I heard on the guest speakers, I think they were in favor of obviously everybody's in favor of the ordinance, but what were your concerns that you noted?
I wanted to make sure that town council and our town manager were comfortable with the comments made regarding expanding membership and also the comments regarding bylaws. If the town manager and our policymakers are comfortable that the document is broad enough as it exists to address those concerns, then I'd understand moving forward. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't ignoring those concerns.
So holding back an option of broadening it.
Correct, in terms of membership in particular, and there is no statement currently in the document regarding giving the commission the directive regarding bylaws. But I am at your convenience and your discretion. Whatever you and the town manager think is best, I will do.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I don't see everyone. That's why I'm scanning. Anyone else want to comment?
So how would the mechanism for developing the bylaws work? Because I just want to make sure that, and I understand that perhaps they could be more clear in setting the agenda. But we also have a wide scope. We heard from members of the the differently abled community. There are different. All I don't want to leave anybody out by listing everybody, but I guess my concern is that if we're intending this to be an action-oriented commission, focused on things like programming and pulling in new volunteers. We heard from a high school student today.
Right.
Do we give them a starting point? Because if the first thing they do is start joining this meeting and hearing about, Robert's rules and setting the bylaws and some of this arcane stuff, is that going to keep people engaged? And I just wonder, and I think, we're going to need, some level of that structure to run efficiently and set the guardrails. But, I guess, is there something that we can use as a starting point? Because I think if people get very excited about this committee and doing something and they find out that they're going to be spending the next 6 months coming up with bylaws, that might shoot us in the foot. I could be wrong, but that's a challenge to overcome. So I would want to make sure that we have a way of navigating those folks through that, or doing it in parallel with something else.
Yeah, so Chris, I second that thought in the sense that I want this to be a parallel process. I don't want it to be like stuck like somewhere like, now we are like working on another recipe, right? I mean, for lack of a better word. So the thing is, I think if it's a process which is parallel, and if you want to establish bylaws and, we can articulate what the process is, I'm fine with that. I just want this ball to be moving rather than being in analysis paralysis phase, again, to use a metaphor or phrase.
Thank you. Any other comments? I do agree with both counselors with respect to the bylaws. I think that, we could probably, if we wanted to, Dana, add a sentence that, it's up to the commission or to examine if there would be bylaws and what those would look like. And I do want to make a recommendation, maybe with respect to membership. We heard from the state that 7 members seems to be working. So, I would recommend that we consider the 7, and we can certainly do that tonight, and then we're done. I think we're all,
Great.
So I don't know how the council feels about that, but if someone wants to offer a motion to change the membership number from 5 to 7 to be more aligned with, sort of what the state is doing, and not to be too narrow in our local initiative.
So right now we have 5 full members and 2 alternates. So this is basically making just 7 full members and getting rid of the alternates.
Well, I think we always have to have an alternate, right?
I would keep the alternates.
Mm.
I would keep them. It'd be 9.
There's 7 and 2 alternates.
Yeah.
I'll move that we increase the membership from 5 to 7 and have 2 alternates, because that's what I suggested last time and you guys shut me down. So I will be happily making.
And I'll second that.
I got to have some humor in here a little bit.
Thank you. All right. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor for the Mimi Thoreau motion?
Which one you're adopting, 24-2B, commission consists of 7 members.
Yeah.
Then, but you're gonna leave everything else the same, appointed by the town council?
Yeah.
Okay, and, okay, so then we're gonna appoint 5. How's the next 2 gonna get appointed?
It would be the same, right? It would be
Say that
moving.
again. Yeah.
So make that 4 and 3.
That would work.
And did you suggest adding a new bullet about having the commission form its bylaws?
Yeah. Would that be proper process, Dana?
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you.
Dana would put that in 21-1, 24-1, 6,
that a motion, Chris?
Oh, sure. I'll make a motion that we include a reference to the commission developing its own bylaws.
Great.
And I'll
I
second.
second that.
And I think it's something, we can give I mean, they can take time to do that. I don't think they have to do it, their first meeting. They can take even a year to get that done, but it's something that they should as they get moving. So that hopefully will get them doing some activities or whatever first, and then meanwhile, they can be working on their bylaws as well.
Fantastic.
So that'd be in
Okay.
24-1, number 6.
Okay.
Develop its bylaws.
Got it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I will then entertain a motion to accept our draft resolution.
I can make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Just to clarify one more.
Yes, sir.
This is for the final one, right?
Well, I think John wanted to say one
No,
thing.
I just want to go back to 24-2.
Fine, sir.
We got the 7 appointed by 4 and 3, and then 2. So we'd say like number 1 and C, 3 appointees, secretary, and 2 regular members expire 24. And 3 appointees, vice chairman, and 2 regular members expire January 25.
Mhm.
That way you got up to 7.
Okay. Thank you.
I got to balance things out.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Prakash, you're on.
So Madam Mayor, I want to make a motion to approve ordinance to create the Rocky Hill Commission on Inclusion and Innovation with the amendments suggested here or cast here.
2 friendly motions.
Yes. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Okay. Dana, thank you so much for all of your hard work and for making this possible. And certainly you were a driving force behind this with all of the research and the input. And on behalf of the council, we thank you enormously for your time. And we really look forward to working with you and having you serve on this new commission. We're very excited.
Thank you, as am I. Have a good evening.
You as well. All right, guys, let's move on to new business. We have with us our town attorney, Carrie Olson, to give an update on 60 West Street. Attorney Olson, are you here? I see you. I don't hear you. No, okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, my dogs might bark. I have to apologize for that in advance.
It's late.
So I was asked to be here tonight to talk about my analysis of the ability of the town to control the residents at West. And in particular, I was asked to address the question of whether the town had any options to, in any way, avoid the current residency of Wayne at 60 West Street. I just want you to know, it's not lost on me that this is a very serious concern. I'm sure both the town council as well as the residents. I want you to know this is a concern that is shared across the state by many towns and many municipalities, and frankly, among the states in our nation. And I'm prepared to give you a dissertation on where things stand currently, but to address the specific questions that were posed to me, I think it's important to start with an analysis of the secure care cases. I've reviewed both of them. Again, as you know, we didn't represent the town at the time. We're litigating over these. The first case involved the issue of whether 60 West could, under the auspices of the state, claim some type of immunity. As you know, our appellate courts decided that they did not have the luxury of escaping your jurisdiction for zoning purposes based on the fact that they were not a sovereign state, if you will, and back. You then went before Judge Berger, who rendered a decision as to whether your current zoning regulations would deny 60 West the ability to continue operating under its nursing home license and accepting individuals who had criminal backgrounds. And as you know, Judge Berger's decision was that the type of person that's accepted at 60 West does not affect overall the categorical definition use at that site, which is as a nursing home. So those were the first two parameters that I looked at. I was then asked to look at the statutes regarding the state's authority to contract with private nursing home facilities with respect to either social services, corrections, or mental health and addiction services to provide skilled nursing home services to individuals that qualified for those services. And in particular, that was section 7B 372A. As I indicated to the town manager and in my prior email, section 17B 372A is actually a permissive statute. What it does is it allows the state to expend state funds and to enter into contracts with private entities to provide skilled nursing home services. It does not, in and of itself, prohibit those skilled nursing care facilities from contracting with others or from accepting residents who qualified for the services that they provide. And I do appreciate that there are individuals in the community who perhaps thought that this statute indicated that if it's not a state contract with the state of Connecticut, that precludes the ability of a private nursing home to accept patients that do not fall under the auspices of either the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services or corrections or social services. But that is not what the statute says. It's actually an enabling statute. It's not prohibitive, it's enabling. It gives the state the right to spend money to enter into contracts with private facilities. These private facilities, and again, this is not just limited to nursing homes, but generally, they have a right to accept patients that meet the criteria necessary for the level of care that they can provide. The second issue that was raised was whether the fact, and I shouldn't say it's a fact because I don't know that, but there's been an assertion that Mr. Chapman's care is being paid by Mass Health, which is the Massachusetts arm of Medicaid. Medicaid is a federally run program, the oversight of which has been delegated to the states to oversee the provision, again, under the auspices of the federal statutes for providing Medicaid services to people who qualify. And in just very generally, Medicaid services are only going to be provided to people who meet the income eligibility requirements, as well as the level of care requirements for the particular services that are being provided. I would agree with your residents who have said that mass health, if you will, is only supposed to be provided for Massachusetts residents. What I do not know, as I sit here today, is whether Mass Health is still paying for Mr. Chapman's care. Because while Mass Health benefits are not transferable, if you will, to residents of Connecticut based on their own criteria, that does not mean that Mr. Chapman does not qualify for Medicaid payments under our state program. If he is a resident and deemed a resident of Connecticut, he is allowed to apply for and receive Medicaid benefits under the Connecticut Medicaid program. And then again, to backtrack, even if Mr. Chapman is receiving Mass Health benefits currently, there is a basic tenet under legal principles of when you have the right to assert a claim. And it's based on the notion that you have to be aggrieved or have standing. And so again, one of the bases for my ultimate conclusion that we didn't have a basis for having Mr. Chapman evicted, if you will, from 60 West, based on whether Mass Health was paying for his care, is the notion that as a town, much less as a state, we do not have standing to assert the rights of Massachusetts residents and the Massachusetts government as to whether Mr. Chapman is entitled to Massachusetts Medicaid benefits. In other words, if Mass Health decides that Mr. Chapman is not qualified for payments under the Mass Health program, that is their fight. It is not Rocky Hill's fight. It's not the state of Connecticut's fight. We don't have standing to assert their legal rights. You have to be aggrieved. And if Mass Health is using their funds for the benefit of Mr. Chapman, we are not aggrieved. Rocky Hill isn't paying for his care. The state of Connecticut is not paying for his care. And so again, even assuming Mass Health is paying, which based on their principles and their parameters, I suspect it's way more likely that Mr. Chapman has moved to 60 West and has applied for Medicaid benefits under the Connecticut rules. Again, I don't know that, but I also don't know that he's receiving Mass Health benefits at this point. The bottom line is I don't see a legal avenue based on those arguments for the town of Rocky Hill to have standing or to be aggrieved in a manner that would allow for Mr. Chapman to be forced to leave the facility in which he resides. The other issue is the notion of whether, in general, the town of Rocky Hill has the ability to decide where people reside. I'm sure you're all very much aware, I know there are attorneys on this council, that the legal authority of any municipality is based on statutory construction. You only have those powers that are granted to you by state law. Under state law, you do have a very general power to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And from there, you've probably heard that there are some towns and other states that have attempted to limit the ability of designated sexual offenders to live in certain communities. And I'm going to just, again, very briefly, give you the dissertation of the law. Currently, Rocky Hill has no such ordinance. And although I was led to believe that Danbury had an ordinance that actually limited the location of a sex offender to certain schools, their residency. When you actually look at their ordinance, what it limits is the ability of a sex offender to access public properties where children may congregate. So parks, schools, youth centers, that kind of thing. Many towns have adopted similar ordinances to Danbury, but I have to say there's only about 5 of them. And recently, Windsor Locks, who had adopted a similar ordinance, was challenged by not only an unnamed resident, I assume sex offender, but the Fair Housing Group, and they actually repealed their ordinance. Even though the ordinance didn't tell the sex offender they couldn't live within a certain distance of a school, but that they were not allowed to be present within a certain distance of a school or a park or a youth organization, they chose to repeal their ordinance rather than fight the constitutional challenge. The bottom line is that as it stands today, there is no town in Connecticut, nor has the state adopted any laws that restrict within a specified distance where a sex offender can live with respect to designated areas that constitute, quote, child safety zones. The other issue that I just wanted to address briefly is the notion that even if Rocky Hill were to adopt such an ordinance and be the first, nothing wrong with being the first, but be the first to adopt an ordinance that specifically restricts where a sex offender can live with respect to certain child safety zones, the constitutional provisions of the law would likely overturn that ordinance to the extent that it had any retroactive effect. So even if you were to adopt an ordinance tonight that said that no sex offender can live within 500 feet of a school, it would not impact the current and existing residency of any sex offender at 60 West, because ordinances are required to have prospective application rather than retroactive. And I say that again, based on the number of cases that have challenged them and have found that someone who already lives in a location or owns property in a location before an ordinance is adopted is denied their constitutional rights of avoiding ex post facto laws that would effectively say that somebody who lives somewhere at the time an ordinance is adopted would have to pack up their things and move. So these were the bases of my overall conclusion that as of this moment, the town of Rocky Hill does not have a clear path to remove the existing sex offenders who reside at 60 West Street. And again, even if you were to adopt an ordinance, the question is whether that would be effective on a going forward basis from a constitutional challenge, but even more specifically, retroactively to those who are currently already living there. And I hope I covered everything, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Attorney Olson. I just wanted to touch base briefly on the idea of the ordinance. I understand that we don't have the standing with respect to 60 West and its existence. And it sounds like, you know, the ordinance, as much as we probably want to be as proactive as we can and looking at, you know, the boundaries we can push, it sounds like with this recent development in the constitutional challenge and the repeal by that municipality, that may subject us to some litigation. And so aside from the standing issue and the ordinance issue, is there any other avenue legally, to sort of prevent something like this from happening in the future?
So again, I can't predict what the state would do, but at this juncture, I do not see any avenue to prevent the sex offenders that currently reside at 60 West to force them to move out. I see no avenue for the town at this juncture. You could certainly try, but I cannot imagine, based on the current precedent, that it would pass constitutional muster. You could also implore your legislature to adopt, and there are states that have adopted statewide laws that limit the location of current sex offenders or prospectively sex offenders to certain areas where there are, young people are likely to congregate. But even those are subject to strict constitutional, well, I shouldn't say strict, rational basis constitutional analysis. Because if you get into a situation, and there was a case in, I believe it was Florida, where what effectively the state law would have done was denied anybody who is a registered sex offender from living virtually anywhere in several counties, because anytime you looked at where there was a school or a park or a playground, or effectively you were telling these people that they had nowhere to live within that area if you looked at the parameters that were set. And again, the constitutional analysis on that is, look, people have a right to move. They have a right to live where they want to live. If you look at the state laws as they currently exist, while sex offenders must register and notify, once you get past that, the onus is on really and truly the Department of Corrections to deal with the community and how to deal with their anxiety over the fact that these people live in their communities. The other thing I should mention is various ordinances that did not pass scrutiny did not distinguish between low-level sex offenders and high-level sex offenders. I mean, certainly Mr. Chapman would be at the high level. There's no question. But there are also low-level sex offenders who, are going to be off the registry in a few years because of some indiscretion when they were young, whatever. So those things are subject to scrutiny. The ordinances that have passed muster have looked at the different levels of sex offender violence attributable to each sex offender and have geared their ordinances towards the most serious sex offenders. They have also grandfathered those who already exist in the community. These are the ones that have passed muster. And again, all of this leads me to the ultimate conclusion that as of today, as we sit here today, and I looked it up, there are several sex offenders at 60 West. There are also several residents of 60 West who are not sex offenders, but regardless of that, there is no clear path for the town of Rocky Hill, either on a standing basis, an ordinance basis, or any other basis that's been raised to have those persons removed from 60 West.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up to the council at this time. Are there any comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question though. What you're saying though is that if we did come up with an ordinance that differentiated different levels and so forth, it would apply prospectively. It could, and we may get challenged anyway, but at least it could apply prospectively, so that at least there wouldn't be any additional serious sex offenders that would be there. Is that correct, Carrie?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. If Rocky Hill had a blank, so the majority of towns in Connecticut that have adopted an ordinance, and I believe there's about 6 or 7 of them, have focused on public places. They've said you don't have a right to be present at our local schools, our youth centers, our parks, our playgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. They don't focus on a blanket 500 foot, 1,000 foot, 2,500 foot, you can't live within the area. They just say, if it's town property, if we control it, and if it's a place where youth congregate, you should not be present there. And if you are present there, then you are subject to citation. And so whether a ordinance that says you can never live within 1,000 feet of an elementary school or otherwise, whether that would pass constitutional muster would depend upon, 1, if it's prospective, 2, if it adequately distinguishes the most serious offenders, if it grandfathers those who either were convicted prior to or moved to the area prior to. These are all the factors that go into whether that type of an ordinance would be deemed constitutionally firm. The other thing I'm going to say to you, again, the Windsor ordinance that was challenged, they brought a lawsuit and they chose to repeal their ordinance rather than spend the money to fight it. That ordinance was more of the Danbury type, where it basically said, we don't want you on our public property. We don't want you in our town parks, in our town schools. It had nothing to do with a distance requirement. It was, if you're on town property where children congregate, you're out. And that was challenged, and they repealed their ordinance. There has been no challenge in Connecticut because there is no ordinance that exists that provides just a blanket distance requirement. So you would be certainly setting precedent there. And I can only tell you, based on my analysis across the country, what parameters would help you to survive a constitutional challenge. I cannot tell you that.
And also, there would be nothing that would prevent us from advocating for the state to, it's a different governor, so we could advocate to the state to change the law or do something we could do that, correct?
You are absolutely right. And in fact, I feel this is a statewide issue. I feel as much as the neighbors are very, very concerned about 60 West, and I totally appreciate that. At the end of the day, your strongest voice is going to be a collective voice and a statewide, ability to address the concerns. Again, this statute was adopted by your legislature, the one that allows these organizations, or I should say agencies or factions of the state, to negotiate with and contract with private nursing home facilities to provide these services. Your legislature adopted this. If this is bad for your community, if it's bad for the state, then it's really a legislative fix. It's not something that I think Rocky Hill is going to have a lot of muscle in pushing forth. And again, when you're looking at a situation like 60 West with individuals that are already there, the question is, how far reaching would an ordinance be? What about the next nursing home or neighborhood? What implication is that going to be? I think there are issues with enforcement, to be frank. How do you know if a sex offender has walked within the ambit of a youth center or a school, unless you have the man force to constantly watch? There are a lot of enforcement issues here. And I hear the concerns of your residents saying, you know, we don't want all these sex offenders coming from out of state and flooding our neighborhoods. But that to me is truly a legislative fix. It's got to be a legislative fix.
That's our best avenue.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Attorney Olson, I'd just like to, I appreciate you revisiting, so to speak, the town's frustrations and wranglings with this issue. I know your law firm wasn't in place at this time. I believe Attorney Morris Boria fought the cases, the appeals in court. Counselor Emanuel, you and I were in the executive session, and we can't talk about it, but a significant dollar figure was presented to us in legal fees that we just finally exhausted town resources in fighting. Is that not correct?
No, you're correct.
I mean, so I just don't know where the misinformation, because we continue to have public comment that you just refuted, and we're all feeling the same way, but it's not because any one of the counselors here wants to perpetuate this situation, and it just seems like there's just a boatload of misinformation out there, and I appreciate you going back through all the details on this.
If that can be helpful, I don't know if I understood precisely all of your concerns and whether I addressed them all. But again, this is obviously a statewide concern. It's a nationwide concern, and I'm not sure it's something that Rocky Hill should shoulder on its own. Something it should. You already fought the fight with Secure Care. It was determined that you couldn't control this through zoning, which is one of your, major muscles. And I've seen the emails from the residents. They have varied opinions about what your legal rights are. Again, I've looked at this very, very carefully. If they feel that there is someone else that can fight this fight for them, then they certainly are willing to do that. But this is my best judgment based on everything I know. And if there is anything that I can provide to you in addition to appease your concerns as to whether you've been responsive to your residents, the town has, as you said, incurred enormous expense to fight this. The
name of a good lobbyist.
Well, I did have a question, because I understand some of the items that you mentioned were sound like they might have been overly broad. There's all sorts of, the sex offender registry presents a lot of challenges, and some of these were probably written in a way that people couldn't live in their town. And I also question how effective it is issuing a citation to someone who's on Medicaid who probably doesn't have any money anyway. So you're really giving, and also they can't go where the public is, and they probably can't go drop the property tax off at town hall. So I guess there's all sorts of challenges at the constitutional level that would raise with that type of ordinance. But I guess my question is there anything, and also we potentially be targeting people who are there now and specific people, which has its own challenges. But this is a facility that right now, there's 8 sex offenders there now. There's, I think, 11 on that road. So what we're seeing is potentially, do we have a way of setting an upper bound at a facility level, either just wherever they might be in town, that says, or do you know if it's been tried? It says for particular congregate housing facilities, can we take only a certain number of, let's say, level 3 sex offenders? Something that is a little more targeted, but on who is pulling those, who is attracting these types of patients who do pose certain risks for our community, because that would potentially get us out of the fact of, someone just bought a house in town and now they feel like they're getting run out because they're within a certain 1,000, feet of a school or a public facility. Is there anything from that angle that we could try, or that might work?
So it's interesting that you should ask me that question, because I've had to deal with this in the group home setting. And again, this is a situation where towns have been denied their right to zone to a certain extent if there are group home facilities limited to a certain number of individuals and, you know, they meet certain criteria. And it's interesting because the state has said that when it comes to group homes, that towns should only have to take a certain percentage. The problem that we face, and this is what I think, you know, Windsor faced, is that there are organizations out there that deal exclusively with fair housing. And they argue and they litigate all the way to the federal and whatever courts that any regulation of where a person is allowed to live is a violation of the Fair Housing Act, which is a separate and distinct federal law. And this has caused a lot of agita across the state. Towns that have tried to enforce their zoning regulations, you know, have been slammed with these claims that it's, you know, discriminatory, etc. I will be clear with you, sex offenders are not a quote unquote protected class under the law. So they don't get special treatment, but they get the same treatment as you or I. And nobody has a right to tell you or me where we have a right to live. And so as long as we meet certain criteria. And so again, this is why Windsor pulled back. You know, they said, look, we're not going to take on this battle. It's likely going to be $500,000 or more to fight. And we're just going to repeal our law. And I would also suspect that part of that analysis was that they looked at the effect that law had over the course of time before the lawsuit was brought and tried to determine whether it was truly effective. And I think you're very astute in the knowledge that it's one thing to have an ordinance, it's another thing to enforce it. And it can be very time consuming, costly, and frustrating to enforce ordinances relating to housing issues.
Just to thank you, Attorney Olson. Just to briefly follow up on what Councilor Sharmat said, I do have the amount we spent because it's public information, because I had a just emailed exchange with our town manager, and it was over $220,000 we spent on that initial legal battle that we eventually were not successful in. So,
but I'm gonna credit you all, because again, we were not involved at the time, but you put up a great fight. I mean, their first argument was that they are an arm of the state because that your residents are citing, and therefore they're exempt from all regulation. Excuse me. They lost that battle. And then it went back to Judge Berger, who is a renowned land use judge, who said, based on the information in front of him, this was not a change of use, and therefore you had no right to challenge it. It's a nursing home. If it's any consolation to all of you, the fact that this is a nursing home and that anybody who moves in there has to meet specific criteria to be eligible for Medicaid or skilled nursing home care, I can only say I hope it's of some consolation to you that these are people that for the most part are inept at doing activities of daily living. We're talking about people who need help with just the basic human needs. And so their ability physically to challenge your neighborhoods, I think is limited. Again, just based on the knowledge of what level of care a skilled nursing care facility provides, and to qualify for that level of care, you have to be in pretty rough shape. So I hope that's of some consolation to you. I'm sure to your residents it's not, but if you decide to go the route of an ordinance, we need to be very careful in our drafting. I'm happy to help you in that endeavor, but I cannot say that you will not be subject to challenge.
Carrie, one other question. from a different perspective, kind of thinking out the box for future residents, what about Medicaid, approaching it like Medicaid reform, where if a person is a high level sex offender or some other criminal, that they're not eligible for Medicaid? Because if he didn't have Medicaid, or a future sex offender doesn't have Medicaid, there's no way they would get accepted to secure care.
You're absolutely right. I mean, secure care is going to want to get paid. And
Right.
that's my point about this whole Mass Health thing. If Mass Health has determined that he is now living out of state, they're going to stop paying. So the residents there are either getting state subsidies based on the criteria that they're eligible, or they have some other private payer source. But I'm going to tell you, you're taking on a big beast, because if you wanted to revamp the Medicaid program, that goes all the way up to the federal level. The states only administer the federal Medicaid program. And so, that's a big nut to crack, and certainly one that you'd have to take to the legislature.
Right. But I mean, the way I view this, and, we've viewed it for many years, is this is kind of like a unique situation, a unique facility that seems to be the magnet for, these criminals that can't go anywhere else. So I think it's a different criteria. And we need to look at it differently. You're right on the zoning. We already tried, we already looked at that several times, but I think it's time to look at some different perspectives in preventing people from going there, because again, it just seems like to be a magnet for the criminals that are not able to go anywhere else.
But see, that is the problem. I mean, the fact that they are willing to take these tough clients, I don't think impacts whether the clients are eligible. Medicaid is really based upon financial parameters, physical need parameters. It doesn't, it doesn't focus on whether you were ever a sex offender, whether you were ever arrested. Any one of us on this phone call, if our income drops to $1,600 or less, we have the right to apply for Medicaid. And if we require skilled nursing care, we are entitled to go into a skilled nursing care facility. And in fact, you should know that people who are eligible for Medicaid, that nursing home facilities in the state of Connecticut are statutorily bound to have a waiting list and to take people in turn. They have a certain level of discretion, but by and large, if they are eligible for Medicaid, they cannot deny somebody simply because they are Medicaid, unless their census, it's complicated, but unless their census reaches a certain level. So, and that is mandatory by state law. You can't deny somebody admission. They're qualified.
Right. And that's why I brought it up, because if it's state law, they administer the Medicaid program, then we could work with our legislatures on at least discussing it.
And I would encourage you to do so.
Yeah.
I would
Okay,
definitely
thanks.
encourage you to do so. Again, my objective was to see what is a clear path for Rocky Hill to nip this issue in the bud. And again, I respect your residents' concerns. I respect the amount of work that they did to try to come up with novel ideas on how to attack the problem. I've reviewed all of them. And again, I stand by my opinion. I see no clear path. Now, if they see some other path where they have standing or an ability to challenge this, more power to them. I just do not see a clear path for Rocky Hill that will not be fraught with litigation or other constitutional challenges.
Thank you, Attorney Olson. We really appreciate you spending time with us, and we know it's super late, and you gave us a very thorough analysis, and we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you. Okay, one more item on new business. We have the discussion, possible action of two more things. Discussion, possible action, Connecticut Greenways Council designation of Greenway. And I believe on this, we have Sandy Kelly from PIC and Kim Ritchie from PIC and Planning Department. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kim, if it's all right with you, I'll just start off on this. I think everyone has heard just about everything that the Greenway entails. And I want to make a note, the terms green space and greenway were used interchangeably a few times, and that's not accurate. I don't want to get semantical on this, but it's a green space connotes a big area, and that would make the farmers nervous. This is a greenway, it's a green route. And I would stress that it's a route that's publicly town-owned roads, which we can't restrict people from them. We just had a whole legal dissertation on restrictions, town's abilities. Granted, that's a horribly different situation, but these are town-owned roads that people already walk on, bike on, etc., have been restricted from, and we are just going for a designation. It's nothing more, nothing less. As Lisa Gilbert read right from the DEEP website, and this was initiated by what's known as the Greenways Council, the Connecticut Greenways Council, which is part of DEEP. One thing that, that we talked about the benefits of this, there is various funding that's available for Greenway projects, which would be anything within Greenway, which I think would be a strong benefit for the farmers. I mean, think of fixing up a roads because the meadows flood, and that's an issue down there. And this would benefit the farmer access to their land as well as benefit the public. It's definitely helping fulfill our mandate with the 2015 Plan of Conservation Development, which said, quote, Rocky Hill should seek to interconnect open space areas into an overall system, unquote. And this is doing that. And one thing that wasn't mentioned, and I know this has been a push, the mayor has nominated Rocky Hill for this. It's the State Sustainable CT, Sustainable Connecticut designation. There are 11 modules to this. Perhaps you're all familiar with it. Perhaps some of you are. It's a very complicated process to qualify. And the modules cover everything from seniors to affordable housing to transportation. And one module is open space. And having a greenway designation would go a long way toward fulfilling that open space module. And you can't have 10 modules completed. You have to have all 11. So I think it's important that we work to consider every module equally. And this greenway would help us with that. It was interesting, a big concern, and I understand this, was the restriction of motorized vehicles. And I think, consider that Weathersfield approved this very easily. And they have motorized vehicles accessing their farmland. I'm sure Bill Collins is down there with his vehicles because I'm sure he owns land in both, on both sides of the town line. And I think we just add a clause in our nomination which says exceptions will be made for use of motorized vehicles for agricultural purposes. I can't believe that nowhere in this state is there, I can't believe, how should I say this, that there are no agricultural areas through which greenways pass. I mean, think of the entire state, think of the agriculture in the state. So I think when they drafted this, the Connecticut Council, I'm sure they were thinking of ATVs, dirt bikes, off-road vehicles. I'm sure they weren't saying, well, this is the end of farmers. Absolutely not. So I totally understand their concerns. And I know I'm representing PIC, but I'll step to the side as a resident. And I think most of you who know me know I'm as big a supporter of the farmers as you can find, and I would not want to jeopardize their livelihood in any way at all. So the fact that we could possibly improve funding, signage for them and help improve their roadways or rails that come down, whatever, that's a big plus. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. It's basically, you know, we have these wonderful farm-friendly community signs that are up. We're an IBA important birding area sign. This is just one more badge, if you will, to hang on our shield and say, here's to the quality of life in Rocky Hill. You know, one more thing we think about for folks in this town. We have 3 incredible hiking systems, trail systems in town, which the town has worked very hard to keep going. And now for the town, for you folks on the council to recognize the value of this greenway to our people who are already down there. I mean, if we designate it or don't designate it, we're going to have the same traffic flow. I know with COVID, as has been said, there's huge influx of people, and it's a wonderful thing. It's healthy, and I've seen families out where I never would have imagined, families with teenagers all hanging together. So it's a big public plus. I really hope you support it. And with that, I don't want to go on and on because I think you've heard everything there is to know about it. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Sandy, if I could just add to that, I like the word one more badge. I think that's a big plus for the town of Rocky Hill. What Plan Implementation Committee did when this came before the committee is they recommended approval to the town council for their final action. One of the things Plan Implementation Committee did do is put forth a letter to all the farmers and property owners down in the meadows. And there were approximately 35 to 36 letters that went out to all property owners. And you did see some of the results of that outreach to the property owners in the speakers this evening. I note that many of their concerns deal with trespass, deal with domestic animals, waste, litter. Those are all addressed by town ordinances and police powers as well. I did meet with the town planner in Weathersfield, as well as the deputy director of the health district with respect to some funding that they informed me of, which, well, we can't get because there's not a designation at this time, but we could have the ability to get funding for, as Sandy said, securing roads, putting up fences to demarcate the greenway, the public roads versus the private property, for additional signage to explain what the laws are with respect to litter, with respect to trespass. And I think that would be a plus also. So we would work in concert with the abutting community and the health district to ensure that people know what the rules are and farmland is protected. If you have any questions.
Thank you. I'll open up the floor to the counselors. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just have a couple of concerns. Reading some things historically and hearing some of the comments. I'm in favor of a greenway, but I'm conflicted with some of the continued concerns by some of the farmers like Bill and Lisa. When we were discussing closing the gates 4 years ago, and it was lengthy discussions in both public safety and the council in front of packed council rooms, talking about what, the damage that was occurring in the meadows and public right to the meadows versus the farmers the landowner's responsibility and farming. And it came down to ultimately just amending an ordinance preventing vehicles and motorbikes and snowmobiles and things like that. But I walked down there a couple of times over the past 12 months, and I still see motorcycles. I still see dogs being walked without leashes. And we have to remember that there's about 1,000 acres of land down there. And this is pristine soil that's very unique because it's near the river. And as was pointed out a couple of times, when there's animal waste that contaminates the vegetation, when there's motorcycles down there causing damage, thinking about a greenway and attracting more people, I think that's a concern to me, because we have to start thinking about further enforcement to prevent people from walking on there or riding motorcycles, which are prohibited, from causing more damage. And I think we have to enforce the rules before we start expanding the access. And so that's my biggest concern. The second thing is, and this is a question to John Meir, did we, and Kim, maybe you would know too, did we ever resolve the issue of whether Meadow Road, going through the meadows, is officially a town road? Because the last I knew, the farmers were filling in the potholes with some of the help from the town, but it was never resolved 4 years ago about who that town road or that road belonged to.
We do have in the application, and the letter went out to the farmers. It is Great Meadow Road, North Meadow Road. As you enter the meadows from Ferry Park, you'd be taking a right-hand turn down towards the water. ABC Lane are private roads, and Great Meadow Road and North Meadow Road back out to Goffbrook Lane are public roads, and they are on the state aid road list. Now,
it's public road.
Those are public roads, and
is that the same as a town-owned road?
That is correct. That is correct. And we're talking about we're not talking about Meadow Road as it traverses landfill property that's alleged by property owners in that location. We're talking about the roads that traverse the meadows towards the east, towards Glastonbury, north towards Weathersfield, and west back towards Goffbrook Lane. Those are in fact public town roads. Those are in fact do receive state aid road money. There is no expansion of access. One of the comments and concerns presented by in a written correspondence to the mayor that I received through the town manager mentioned possible expansion of the roads needed for larger farm equipment. The town cannot expand those roads because the right-of-ways go right up to their property. We would have to take property from the farmers, and we're not trying to do that. We do not want to do that. We are a right to farm community. We're purchasing development rights on farms in order to keep farming in the town of Rocky Hill, to enhance the open space and character of the town of Rocky Hill. So we're not expanding access to the public. All it is as Sandy said, it's a badge, it's a label, just saying this is a Rocky Hill Greenway. COVID, yes, COVID has increased the use of outdoor spaces, because isn't it nice to take your mask off when you're outside? It's wonderful, catch a breath of fresh air. People are now getting vaccinated and they're going back to work. There may actually be a decrease in the number of people going down there. Enforcement of the leash laws, enforcement of vehicles going into the meadows that are not owned by the farmers, that are not farm equipment. That's what needs to happen as well.
Now, what about, because I have a letter here from Jim from 4 years ago, Jim Salmi. The mileage, he was just confirming to John, the mileage is approximately 2.8 miles of unimproved road that the town currently receives 17,788 from the state, or from the state as town aid for road. Would this greenway stop tar? Town aid road?
It's still a public road. Those are still
So-
designated as public roads.
Okay, so this wouldn't interfere with that aid coming in.
The roads are town roads, except for those little side roads, which are the farmers' roads.
Okay,
You know, we give town aid road money, it's in the calculation. And all this is doing is calling those roads greenways. And then it's probably gonna hook up to Weathersfield and so on, and then and then you get some benefits because you got named greenways with so-called grant money from the state.
If I may add, the state gives a lot of weight to the fact that there's connectivity. So for for us to be able to connect to Weathersfield, this is their goal. Their goal is connectivity throughout the state. It's not just Weathersfield and Rocky Hill. This is happening all across the state. What Weathersfield would like to do, if they ever build the access to the Putnam Bridge walkway, is to connect to that sidewalk on the bridge and then connect to the Glastonbury Meadows. So that's a continuation, or up into East Hartford, where, if you're familiar, Goodwin College has acres of trailways. So it's a big piece. And we could also connect at some point southerly from the ferry park through somehow Quarry and Dividend to Cromwell. So this is a big picture goal, and it would be a shame for Rocky Hill to be the missing link. You know, like that 300-piece puzzle you put together and you can't find that one piece. It's, you know, the dog ate it, and we don't want to be that missing piece. I understand the concerns, and I'm not trying to make light of them. The farmers have been spraying before, and they'll spray again. Since they locked those gates, everything changed. And as I think it's an interesting point that Kim made, the traffic is decreasing. I see it in Dividend, which is very close to me. People back to work. It's the scofflaws are going to be there, whether we put a badge on this place or don't. And that's about enforcement. That's not about a label. That's the way I see it. That's an enforcement issue. It's been going on, and it will continue, and it's wrong. What else can you say?
Thank you.
Okay.
well, I actually still have, I know it's late. I just want to get this, you know,
Go ahead.
conversations out.
Go ahead.
But Sandy, you know, with this, do you think it's opening up down the road that the state, you know, the towns that have greenways, that the state says, oh, well, you know, we'll fund a paved sidewalk, you know, asphalt. I mean, this is
I
farming.
think
This is farming. What would we say?
the town has a jurisdiction, and I can't imagine
cannot.
anybody who would say, sure, let's pave a side trail in there. There's not room, as Kim says, there's no frontage. I'd be the first, and you'd probably be the second to say, no way, no, a sidewalk down there.
Okay. All right, thanks. I don't mean to dispute you or Kim, because I know you two are forces behind.
Thank you. Anyone else from the council?
I just have a quick note. I just think, you know, this is probably, you know, when I saw this in the packet, it was, I think, probably the first that I had heard of the Greenway program, and I'm pretty plugged in. I mean, I think at some level, the idea that we're going to be doing a lot of publicity, the people who are clued into it, you know, who are big bikers, long-term bikers, they might be into it. But I'm sure there are, you know, Facebook groups that are involved hiking, biking, that have a lot more visibility, and that we have much less control over, that could spread the news, you know, about where this is. You know, I don't think that the fact that we have this connectivity is something that we can hide. So from that standpoint, or at least from my standpoint, I think it's really about education and potential grant funding. You know, like, people who are going to break the law are going to do it until we pick up our enforcement. But how can we possibly leverage the fact that we are getting traffic to get, you know, potentially grant money, to do education on where the public roads are, what's private? And we've been hearing horror stories about things going on, people having, you know, keggers in the woods, you know, 30 years ago. it's a long history of people who have used that for, nefarious purposes. But, what's the right way of doing it? You go hiking now, and now people are really behind the idea of leave no trace, because they've been educated. They bring garbage on a hike, they bring it out. Most of them, not everybody. So I think from that standpoint, the genies are kind of already out of the bottle. And if we can leverage the asset that we have to tie into the town and maybe make it more safe, make it more clear, that's probably the approach that is most realistic to take.
Thank you.
I'd like to just tag on to Councilor Emmanuel's comment, because I think for me, and being very involved with farmland acquisition and preservation over the years, and open space commission with you, Sandy, right now, as much as I want to go forward with something like this, there's a lot of questions, and there's a contingency, the farming community that is directly impacted, right? So, I mean, I think we should talk some more to the farmers before we take action on this. Let's not rule it out, but let's find out if we can persuade the farmers that this is a good deal. It'll be there for us next council or after that. I don't know. I just feel like we should just talk to them a little bit more.
Thank you. Any other councilors wish to weigh in?
I'll just say briefly, I agree with the idea of maybe tabling this for now. I think everyone's got some good thoughts on both sides, and I think we want to make sure we're not rushing into something that's good we're going to regret. I appreciate all the opinions about what people will likely do and should do and how things are interpreted, but our council is not going to be here forever, and the people on this call are not going to be here forever. We have to think about down the road how other people are going to interpret this, and we need to make sure we're got ironclad ideas that are going to sustain the test of time, not just while we think things will be interpreted. So I want to make sure we kind of dot our I's and cross our T's, and then find a way that gets everybody on the same page. Then we can, hopefully move forward at that point. So I would be more apt to table and make sure we do this right.
Thank you. Councilor Malero, were you going to say something?
Essentially, it's just regurgitating the same that Councilor Sherman and Levine has mentioned. I think we truly need to. It's no way against the idea, because I think there's some benefits, a lot of benefit there. But by listening to the farmers and truly having all the mitigation towards the risks that they identified in today's call, we want to make sure we're clear. I know we've mentioned a few mitigation options, but I think we just need to dig into a little bit more and get that talk through in a little more detail so that it's clear.
Thank you. Any other councilors?
I would just
I'm sorry.
I would like to hear more from people from, like, say, Weathersfield, farmers or not, like who went through this, and what is their experience has been. I mean, I just want like some experts to like talk about this a little bit more, because it seems like it's like kind of the facts are not very clear to me. Like, as much as, to all due respect to everyone who spoke today, farmers as well as all the experts, Kim and Sandy, I just feel like we need more information, and I'm definitely open to that, but I just want to have more facts.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, councilors? Okay, I'm just going to weigh in very quickly. This was presented to us quickly. And the PIC committee has moved at a rapid pace to make sure that we had as much information as we could, and I respect that. I think the official designation is a really cool thing. But with that recommendation, a number of letters went out specifically so that we could have the opinion of the people who are out there, and equally important are farmers, because these are the folks, who they're out there, they're not walking, they're not riding bikes, they're making a living, right? And contributing to our food source. So I think that we have to really take what they're saying and really consider what the effects are going to be on them. And I'm just hearing a lot of speculation as to what we think the effects may be on them. And yeah, funding is important. And I will be the first one to try to implement any plan where we can get funding, but not at the expense of someone's livelihood, not at the expense of potentially harming active farming. So I do think it is wise to just table this discussion, get a little bit more information, and then bring it back so that we're making the right decisions.
Lisa, I don't know if I could just make a quick comment.
Yes.
Based upon the correspondence and what was said by both Billy Collins and Jason Matway in particular, there are issues that have gone on in the past. And this designation, I see only helping it, but it does bring to light the fact that issues are existing there now, and those need to be addressed. The trespass, the dog waste, the off-leash animals, people trespassing motorized vehicles that don't belong there, that needs to be addressed, whether or not this goes forward or not. But the designation certainly won't change what has happened in the past out there.
It won't, and that's a valid point, because I think if we're having a problem with enforcement now and we need to address it, why do we want to exacerbate it?
I don't know. I think this would help with respect to funding for possible fences
Yeah.
for the farmers,
Yeah.
or signs.
Yeah, potentially, I agree with you. So where are we now with this? Are we going to have a motion? We'll entertain a motion. Who was the last counselor to speak?
Actually, I don't think we need a motion.
We not need one, just to table it?
Possible action.
We don't need a motion to table it.
No motion to approve, so we could just move forward.
I think you got to make a motion to table it.
Yeah.
And then in the future, you got to make a motion to take it off the table.
Yeah.
Discuss it again.
Okay. So
Madam
would someone
Mayor,
like, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to table this for further discussion, specifically around the actual facts on the on state's intentions and on the farmers' willingness to go along.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, ladies.
I don't know if
we're going-
everybody was in favor, Lisa, tabling.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't see everyone. So why don't we do a roll call? It would be much easier. So I'm going to go down. Counselor Sharma,
Aye.
Counselor Prakash,
Aye.
Counselor Greenspan,
Aye.
Counselor Levine,
Aye.
Counselor Malero,
Aye.
Counselor Thoreau,
She's on mute, so.
No.
Counselor Duff,
Aye.
Counselor Manuel,
Aye.
and myself, I'm in agreement to table it. Okay, thank you, everyone. Item 10C, discussion possible action. Local 1303-112 of council, no, I can't read it. Number 4, AFSCME successor contract. I believe we're going to table this. Is that correct, John?
Yes, we thought the union would be voting on it before now, and I guess before the meeting started, Dana, we haven't heard one way or another. So again, another table.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to table this.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to table discussion possible action local 1303-112 of council number 4 AFSCME successor contract.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're getting there. We're going to move to the mayor's report with full enthusiasm. Okay, so April is Earth Month, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows we have a dedicated Sustainable Rocky Hill webpage now. We want to thank John Murphy for that. And so it's www.rockyhillct.gov/Sustainable Rocky Hill. And we're asking everyone to just get out there and do their part. And especially to keep it simple, just use, we have a hashtag. So if you're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, please take pictures of whatever you're doing. If you're planting gardens, planting a tree, composting, and include the hashtag sustainable RH, and the RH is capitalized. And then we'll be able to link all of those hashtags, and we're actually getting a very generous donation from MDC of some really cool reusable water bottles. So everyone who participates will get one of those water bottles. While supplies last. We have about 100 of them. And very quickly, I want to tell you about two incredible initiatives. We have a student, and I'm not sure, we have a photo of him. I don't know if we're able to get it up, who has this very impressive battery recycling project going on. He's a 7th grader. His name is Sharish. And I recently met with him and his father. And I'm very happy to announce that they will have a bin to for folks in town to deposit batteries that need to be recycled. There will be a bin at the Cora J. Belden Library. And this student will also be participating in our drug take back booth, which will be later on, and have a bin there so folks can deposit their batteries. And so just a really cool initiative, and we're super proud of this young man. And here he is. Okay, Sharish, here you are. Wonderful photo. And this is the nonprofit that he signed up to join, and doing great things as a 7th grader in our community. So thank you so much. And the other thing I want to tell you is we have our first sustainable CT project sort of in the works. We're working with Sustainable CT. It will include a Rocky Hill Eagle Scout who is building a intergenerational food pantry garden, and the greenhouse and the composting bin to go along with it, along with his troop members and groups of volunteers. So I want to encourage everyone to stay tuned. We're going to put out information and encourage all of you to get involved in that project. And that's it. I'm not going to talk anymore tonight. So let's move on to the town manager's report.
Yes, the summer brochure is coming out on April 30th. Edition of the Rocky Hill Life has the summer activities for the Parks and Rec, Human, Youth, and Senior Services, Public Works, and Cora Belden Library. Some of the key things are swimming lessons registrations are May 3rd, and camp registrations May 10th. The Parks Department is going to be installing the fishing docks tomorrow. They weren't put in last year due to COVID. And then at second week of May, they'll be putting in the boat docks. The Silestine Streetscape through today, but the electric lamp bases and conduits have been installed. 50% of the lights are up and electrified. 85% of the sidewalks are in. The side where the Roadrunner gas station's on is just about completed. The other side, it's been completed from Parsonage Street up to Saybrook Fish House. Let's see, they're starting to put in the brick edge banding on that from Parsonage Street up to the old Saybrook Fish House. And they're going to be doing some plantings on Thursday once the DOT approves the trees. Also, the state should be putting in the lights out here by the Elm Street Silestine intersection. They got the black master arms in place, but they should be installing the street lights, the traffic lights soon. The street paving projects for the spring and summer, phase 1. They're going to start beginning in June 21st with milling and paving on June 28th. The roads, Grimes, Ashwell, Lewis, Henry, Hillside, Eastview, and Stephanie. They're going to do the parking lots at Elmridge Park and Stevens School. The fall projects, phase 2, roads will include the Toll Gate, Sawmill, Stones Throw, Pleasant Valley, Springbrook, and the police department headquarters parking lot. The Public Works had to move the compost pile due to illegal dumping at the pickup spot on Old Forge Road. There's signage now directing residents that has been located at the end of Old Forge and Dividend Road, similar to where the brush is dropped off. Let's see, want to thank all the ARP volunteers who finished up doing the tax returns. So the ARP tax volunteers, they did about 200 this year over a shorter period of time. They usually do normally 300. And we continue this on Thursday at 5:30 with the first budget workshop. Again, it's Thursday, the 22nd at 5:30, and it will be a Zoom meeting. So, and that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so we are moving along to executive session. The executive session with the town manager and human resources and legal compliance director to discuss records, reports, and statements related to strategy and negotiations with respect to collective bargaining.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we move into executive session.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This is John Murphy. Just give me a moment, please, to stop everything.